Imagine yourself in this world and tell me if you would do things differently. Our story today begins with a very attractive priestess on the day of the arrival of the great hero, who is welcomed by the entire city and glorified. But today, surprisingly, we will not follow the hero's journey, but rather the one who walks in the shadows. And no, it's not a copy of Solo Leveling. Two children, eager to see the great hero, run towards the square. On their way, they pass by a man in disguise. Wait a second, isn't that the dark mage? Is it crap that you have in your head, you miserable fool? The man dressed in dark clothes like the night is our protagonist, heading towards the priestess's castle. Minold was there to deliver the final threat against Asgard, claim his great reward, and with this indescribably beautiful woman before him, he demands his prize. She responds that she remembers the promise, and tells him not to worry, revealing that her true name is Kim Mija. The truth is, our protagonist is someone who came from another world. In other words, he's in an Isekai. He has already fulfilled his mission of saving the world, and all he wants now is to return to his old world. However, the hot woman asks him one last time if he truly wishes to return to his original world and leave behind this incredible, wonderful world. He says yes, and tells her to stop talking nonsense and send him back to his world. She genuinely seems disappointed with his decision, mentioning that they could even compensate him for all the horrible treatment he received in this world. This makes the dark mage's mood change. He then tells her to stop with those jokes, and the woman is surprised by the protagonist's attitude. He asks, after everything he's been through in this world, what could she possibly offer to compensate for it all? I don't know about you, but if I were in his place, I'd ask for something really special. But that's just my opinion. I'm not sure about yours. The girl replies that she can give him anything within her reach. Then Minold doesn't hesitate and says exactly what he wants. Chicken! What? That's right. And I also want pork fillet. Do you think I'm going to keep living in a world where the food is terrible? All you want is food? No. I also want a gaming PC and fast internet. I can't stand going so long without playing League of Legends. Our protagonist is just like you all, addicted to games and reading Manhwa. Giving up on convincing the addict, she says she will prepare the portal for his return to Earth. They head to the summoning place, and the protagonist doesn't even remember how long it's been since he arrived in this world. When they reach the portal, he must stand inside the magic circle. First, she needs to remove the saint's protection that's on his hand, a sort of magical collar that made him obey the priestess's orders. As she removes the mark from his hand, he asks if she isn't worried, since without that mark he could kill her right now. Resolutely, she replies that it doesn't matter, he can do whatever he wants, but she will keep her word. The last step now is to remove the powers he gained in this world, since, after all, he shouldn't return to Earth with the abilities he obtained in Asgard. At that moment, he grabs her by the neck and even lifts her off the ground. Without understanding what he intended with that, the protagonist declares, "Giving up my powers would be stupid. I would never do that." The protagonist lets her fall to the ground, and she understands what he meant by that. She warns that dark magic could consume him in another dimension, but do you think he cared about that? He opens the portal to Earth's dimension himself. What he really needed was just to remove the saint's mark. The rest was already on another level for him. But before that, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a little gift for the saint. "Before I go, here's a gift for you, you bitch. I never want to see your face again. Got it?" No! The protagonist disappears from the Isekai through the portal, leaving behind only the extremely furious saint, who yells that this isn't over. The place where the protagonist went seems to be his old apartment. Even though he was confident, he didn't know if it was going to work, but fortunately it did. We know how long he was away from Earth, but when his room didn't even have dust, that says something. But at least his galaxy is at 100% battery. He gets really happy knowing he'll be able to play again now, but because there's no internet, he can't. Also, he hasn't paid the internet bill either. While Kim was in the room, we see soldiers on a mission, where even the soldiers themselves don't know what the target is. The soldiers' leader doesn't respond when asked what they're hunting, and the captain just starts running towards the hunting area. However, on the way, he sees a civilian messing with his phone, angry because the internet isn't working. The confused soldiers ask among themselves if this area hadn't been restricted to civilians. Why is there a kid here? Kim's reaction to seeing the soldiers in the middle of the street is to think they are in military training, and he apologizes. But the reality is that this place is restricted because of monsters, and our MC here was unlucky enough to be attacked by one of them.
"I'm going to bite your butt."
The great black mage sees no danger in that dog, but now he realizes there's mana due to the dimensional portal he created. But the dog is still unlucky because even without mana, Kim was going to crush it to the ground and still curse at the monster. How dare it attack him? After seeing this scene, the soldiers were in shock, and the protagonist thought that even though he is without mana, the strength training he went through in Asgard prepared him for when he would be without mana, and for the first time, it made a difference. The black mage in the other world suffered there, and that's why he was so furious with the hot priestess. The protagonist, still not understanding how this type of monster is on Earth, looks at the soldiers to ask, and they almost have a heart attack. By order of the commander, the soldiers escort Kim out of the restricted access area. They tell him that he could be arrested for being in that place, and question how he didn't know it was restricted. How can he explain that he spent 3 years trapped in another world? So now he realizes that Earth changed while he was away. He spent 2 years in another dimension, and during that time, something unprecedented in human history happened. Something no one in this video has seen before. Watch this. The dungeon phenomenon spread across the Earth, and monsters invaded everywhere. The appearance of dungeons and superhumans called Awakened also occurred, with incredible abilities and many powers. And so, the Hunter Association was created. However, before Kim went to the other dimension, the awakened humans had been exterminating all monsters for many, many years, and they were never a threat to humanity. So, his surprise is that monsters began to win the war. Before that damned saint summoned him to the other world, things were fine. The only thing that really bothers Kim is that his favorite game's server is down due to the chaos on Earth. He only wanted to come back to Earth to play that, and eat a lot of good food. The soldier, seeing the boy's reaction, is too afraid to ask anything after discovering his strength. Suddenly, Kim gets serious and asks if the humans are okay, especially the game developers. His greatest concern is that game companies will go bankrupt, and he won't have any new games to play. The soldier explains to Kim that the situation in the world got worse due to a strange phenomenon that spread through the dungeons about 2 years ago, which was around the same time Kim was summoned by the priestess. One fine day, the dungeons started appearing much more frequently, grew larger, and monsters began coming out of them before they could be explored. There were so many monsters that humanity didn't have enough numbers to deal with them all, which is why the cities were isolated and evacuated. And once again, with the world messed up, Kim is worried about the game companies. The soldier asks Kim how old he is, and upon learning that he's 21, he tells him that he will need to enlist soon, and his 20s will fly by in the blink of an eye. The soldier reveals that now it's mandatory to serve 5 years in the army because of the dungeons. Kim is in trouble now. His peaceful life, which he wanted, is now at risk. By coincidence, a text message from the government arrives, notifying Kim to enlist tomorrow in Division X. After being taken out of the danger zone, he went straight to a cyber cafe to play something and stuff his face with junk food. For him, playing MMORPGs and being served by the beautiful and kind employee at the cyber cafe are the best things in life. After satisfying his cravings a bit, he searches about the dungeons and finds out he has been notified to enlist tomorrow or he'll be arrested. This makes him furious, not because it's dangerous, but because it's mandatory. With his powers from Asgard, he could easily wipe out the dungeons from the planet, but for some reason, his demonic energy is depleted. Still, he remains powerful because of his training. Kim, seeing that the game was having server issues due to the dungeons, decides to solve that problem himself. The next day, he goes to enlist. "Attention, you bastards, your lives are now ours." Hundreds of people were summoned. All of them are nervous or sad about it, but he's the only one they're happy about it. In the place where the recruitment takes place, Kim sees a similarity between the executioners in Asgard and the army, and he thinks the guys are cool. But in Asgard, he used to get beaten up, so we don't know if he liked that or if he has strange tastes. Hello everyone, before we start the schedule, raise your hands if you wanted to join the Hunter Corporation but didn't have time. No one? You know that the treatment is different. The starting salary, for example, is 3 million in cash. No one? I figured as much. You're all a bunch of losers. Sir, I want to volunteer. The protagonist is the only one among the people who volunteers. And not only that, he courageously jumps from the top of the gym towards the captain and introduces himself as recruit Kim Mage. In Asgard, in the northern region of the Forgotten Canyon, years ago, the protagonist explores a dungeon. He reveals that, as a dark mage, he uses demonic energy, which sets him apart from regular mages, who extract human energy from the environment throughout the week. However, for dark mages, collecting demonic energy in this way is not efficient. The best way to obtain it is by facing powerful creatures in dungeons. The protagonist mentions this while observing the dead spiders in front of him, waiting for the local boss to arrive. When he realizes that all the creatures have been defeated, the Forgotten Canyon boss tries to take revenge. The protagonist's response is simple: to restore his demonic energy, the best strategy is to obliterate powerful monsters with all his strength. This scene happened 645 days before he returned to Earth. Currently, Kim is having coffee with the battalion commander, being the only one who volunteered to join the Hunter Corporation. While waiting for the official formation of the corporation, the commander asks if Kim has any special reason for becoming a hunter. The protagonist replies that he has unfinished business in the dungeons. After a brief, awkward silence, the commander laughs, unaware that Kim's true objective is to recover his demonic energy in the dungeons. Moreover, all the dungeons in the country are managed by the military. The Hunter Corporation is made up of powerful individuals, and those who prove their worth receive a ranking, which can increase based on their merits, with no limits to progress. The protagonist's plan is to use his ability as a dark mage to explore the dungeons alone, rise quickly in the ranking, and gain various benefits. While Kim dreams of becoming a general, the person in charge of the Hunter Corporation arrives in the battalion's room. The protagonist notices that the army commander speaks as an equal to the sergeant from the corporation. As soon as he arrives, the sergeant asks if Kim really has the skills necessary to become a hunter. Initially, Kim didn't like the guy. If everyone in the corporation is like this, it will be a problem, he thought. They asked him to open his status window and show it to everyone. Kim tells us that in Asgard, he didn't even use this status window because he found it useless. When he opened it, it simply showed an error. The sergeant, curious to know the protagonist's status, insisted. Kim explained that it didn't work because the system was bugged. At that moment, the arrogant sergeant got angry. The scene cuts, and now we're at the Hunter Training Center, where Hunter Sun Roka is in the battalion commander's office. The commander was praising the recruit, mentioning that she's as amazing as her father, who is a general. He made a point of saying that he wasn't praising her just because of that, but because she truly deserved it. The flattery was so much that Sun Roka became embarrassed. It's at this moment that the commander notices the arrival of a car with the new recruit and says, "That's the girl's new partner. Let's go visit him now." Meanwhile, the protagonist, Kim, was taken by the sergeant of the brigade facility to take the test. The sergeant, with a condescending tone, warned, "Don't get too excited. You're only here because you're a special case. If it were up to me, you'd already have been discarded." The test was explained. Kim needed to move an object 1 centimeter within a 10-minute time limit. The sergeant added, "If you have talent as a hunter, you'll be able to do it." The sergeant explains that the mineral in front of Kim is a red stone, extremely resistant, created in the dungeon mines. A regular recruit shouldn't even be able to make this stone tremble. But you, Kim, need to move it 1 centimeter, he says, irritated. To the sergeant, Kim was nothing more than a mediocre guy. "That this kid has so much talent. Let's see, you miserable fool," he muttered with contempt. Meanwhile, the commander and the blue-haired girl arrived to watch the test, commenting that Kim had demonstrated incredible physical abilities and that his status window displayed an error, something out of the ordinary. Unlike the sergeant, the commander has hopes for the boy. He observes the stone and makes a quick analysis, concluding that it's possible. Kim punches the stone, and the mineral explodes like you guys exploding the like button here on the video. The mineral evaporates in front of everyone, shocking those present. "Now I think they'll believe that our protagonist is a monster. Damn, I think I overdid it." The scene cuts again, and we see several exhausted recruits trying to complete brutal training by climbing a mountain. Lee Sung-ho, the sergeant in charge of the training, is famous for applying the worst exercises in the corporation. But for the first time, someone seemed to be having fun during the training. Kim was so relaxed that he looked like he was leaving school after class ended early. He even asked himself, "If it weren't for these weights on my feet, would I fly?" For Kim, compared to the training in Asgard, this place was a paradise. The food was much better, the routine was well established, and the free time was great. Kim knew that if he stood out, he could even use the computer room. He was climbing the mountain as if it were a joke. When he reached the top, he stopped and said, "What? It's already over." The trainer couldn't believe how fast Kim was. He had completed the climb long before the others, with a time of 21 minutes, when the normal time would be 1 hour. Kim, full of mischief, remembered the bet he made. If he finished the training in under 30 minutes, he would get a free pass. The trainer, who lost the bet, was surprised, but he was happy to see this prodigy in the corporation and said he would be watching him. Finally, a cool guy, folks. In the dorms, the recruits looked at the training results in the status window. Kim was curious to see his, but since his window was bugged, he couldn't access it. He even remembered the training in Asgard, and that memory gave him a bit of a chill. The other recruits asked what he would do with the free pass. Everyone talked amicably, laughing. The protagonist, Kim, remembered how he was always lonely in Asgard, surrounded by darkness. All this interaction was new to him, but he didn't give it much importance. As soon as he had the chance, he rushed to the corporation's computer room to play. For him, sleeping 2 hours a day was already enough. After all, in Asgard, he used to sleep only 1 hour. A month passed since Kim joined the corporation. On running days, those who didn't run 40 kilometers in 2 hours would go without lunch. While the other recruits finished exhausted, Kim seemed fine, showing no signs of fatigue. Besides that, Kim didn't need his water and offered it to his friends, as if it were nothing for him. While Kim was feeding the chicks, a general announcement was made. In a few weeks, the training period would end. It was said that many wouldn't pass, and this worried the commander a lot. He even stated, "With the level of will and strength you all have right now, those who go to the adaptation training in the dungeons will die." This statement made Kim wonder what kind of training that was. The commander responded, explaining that there are rare cases where dungeons, even after being defeated, don't disappear. In those cases, the recruits are taken to train inside this hostile territory, which left everyone terrified. Seeing the fear in the recruits made the commander feel satisfied. He even compared the training to horse taming, stating that the best way to train recruits is with firmness. What a weird guy! After this warning, the mood of the entire troop became heavy. The commander announced that those with the best grades would earn 3 days and 2 nights off. However, no one seemed excited about the news. Noticing this, the commander tried to motivate the recruits, saying they could use that time to drink beer and hang out with friends or women. Even so, the troop remained unenthusiastic, because it was obvious to everyone that Kim would be the one to win the time off. Doesn't the idiot realize that? On the day of the training inside the portal, Kim is calm, while everyone around him is visibly nervous. The portal where the training will take place is right ahead, but the real danger seems to be something else. The army soldiers who arrived, bringing the hunting dogs that would be used in the training. For Kim, it's no big deal. He looks at the dogs as if they were mere pets, while for the other recruits, the situation was so tense that some even fainted. They received the order to form groups of 4 to enter the dungeon. The instruction is clear. They must fight with all their strength, and if that's not enough, they must use their brains to survive. It's a life or death test. For the training, everyone will use MID2 armor, expensive protective gear known for its effectiveness. However, for Kim, these armors are just ugly and uncomfortable. He even asks if he can take this suit off after defeating the hunting dogs inside. They allow it but remind him that this is a team mission. Kim also needs to take care of his team. "Alright, I'll take off the armor and take care of the team too." No! The protagonist immediately thinks it will be easy. Just teach the others how to defeat the. He shares his plan with the group, saying that when the wolves attack, they should grab the creature's legs and break them. Then, he suggests they finish off by breaking the wolves' spines from behind. Kim, excited, believes everyone has the same strength as him. When the hunting dogs are released into the portals, they don't even pay attention to the humans and head straight into the dungeon. Kim comments that this is natural since the dogs were locked up and by instinct, they're returning home. He also reflects that, in a way, he identifies with these animals. In the other world, he was like them, but now he's not anymore. He doesn't know why, but the superiors got irritated seeing Kim's group smiling, and as punishment, they ordered the group to be the first to enter the portal. The 4 proceed into the dungeon, feeling a bit calmer knowing Kim is with them. Inside, there are hidden people observing and evaluating the group's behavior during the training. Among the group members, one of them seems to dislike the protagonist. The reason? Jealousy. He believes Kim receives special treatment because he is very talented. However, now that they're inside the dungeon, the envious recruit will find out if Kim's talent is really enough to save everyone. As soon as they enter, Kim immediately senses the presence and location of all the hidden observers. He could easily eliminate all of them, but decides not to act. He thinks of his team. If he did that, they wouldn't gain any experience. Kim warns the group where the wolves are coming from and asks them to stay alert. When the wolves start attacking, he orders everyone to step forward, but, as expected, no one had the courage to act. This forces the protagonist to set an example. He moves quickly, dodging the wolves from side to side, and punches one of them, defeating it instantly. And that's it. The poor little wolf is dead, folks. Immediately afterward, Kim looks to the side and sees one of the group members almost being fatally attacked. Without wasting time, he delivers a powerful kick, defeating another wolf. The impact was so strong that it almost made the dungeon's ceiling collapse. Kim saves all his teammates, and, instead of just solving the situation on his own, offers tips on where they went wrong. He encourages the group to try facing the wolves themselves, acting completely differently from what the examiners expected. Kim demonstrated excellent leadership, resisting the temptation to defeat all the wolves by himself to speed up the test. Instead, he prioritized the growth of his teammates. After the combat, the examiners announced that the training was sufficient and that they should leave the dungeon. Kim, always focused on what he can gain, doesn't stop asking if his test score will be enough to guarantee more days off. The instructor tells him to shut up, wondering if he thinks they are going to talk about it, and Kim even mocks him, asking if they were worried about the recruits. But as they approach the portal, something happens. Everything starts to shake, and they ask themselves, "What is this?" One of the instructors orders them to report it on the radio, and also tells them to get out immediately. One of the recruits asks what is happening, wondering if it was an earthquake, but Kim says that it's not an earthquake, it's a dungeon transformation, and it's transforming right at that moment. Then, they question what happens next, but while he speaks, Kim notices that the exit is closing, and as it closes on its own, they begin to get scared. But Kim thinks it's too late to get out now and says that this is not good. At this point, the two examiners are also afraid because the radio doesn't work, and the dungeon transformed too quickly. He says they had more than a month until the internal structure changed again and questions why. But then he calms down and thinks about evacuating the recruits to a safe place first. "What are you doing staring at my sword?" Then, they talk to the recruits, saying that, as they can see, there was an unexpected occurrence in the dungeon, but there is nothing to worry about because they will wait for an hour where they are to see if the entrance opens again, as mentioned in the manual, that they will be able to leave if they wait an hour, and they start to feel relieved because they thought they would be trapped there and were very scared. But the instructor's face reveals that this isn't all. He starts to say that he is sure they are trying to enter from the outside too, mentioning that the lieutenant will make the best decision, and that what they have left to do is wait calmly instead of panicking. But the protagonist asks if that's really all, saying that the reason they were training there was because they were sure that dungeon wouldn't have any unexpected situation like that, and he thinks it's really creepy how the entrance of a dungeon that was always open closed on its own. At that moment, the instructor runs to speak with his companion, and Kim thinks that, as he expected, the instructors are aware that the situation isn't good at all, and he quickly imagines that they reacted calmly. But there is a good chance that there is no manual for such situations. He says that if this dungeon has turned into a closed dungeon, and even the instructor starts to get scared. There are two situations where a dungeon's entrance disappears. The first is when the dungeon dissipates, a situation where the dungeon naturally dissipates once it is defeated, and the second case is the closed dungeon, which is when the portal disappears once an outsider enters it. He says that, while they were inside the dungeon, it turned into a closed dungeon. This makes the disappearance of the gate make sense, and definitely more than one monster will appear. And he says that the only way out of a closed dungeon is to defeat every monster inside it. And he says that this means any chance of external help is non-existent. He thinks that, with 4 recruits who have no experience in real battles and 2 instructors, they will have to clear that dungeon. And he thinks that what he expected happened, because now that he informed them of the situation, everyone got tense. They don't know what monsters appeared, and if they are unlucky, this could really be the end of everyone. But he says that it's not like they can stand still, because they have to keep moving forward while they still have strength. However, he thinks it would be better if the instructors were fully equipped, because that way they will be completely wiped out, even if they encounter goblins, as it will take 10 minutes or more to defeat just one. He says that the most realistic plan, with the highest success rate, would be to use the protective suits that all the recruits are wearing, but he is a bit reluctant to use those stupidly heavy and dense suits. He says that if they use the defensive capabilities and put the recruits at the front, the instructors could defeat the monsters while they withstand the attacks. But he thinks those kids managed to endure the exhausting training until now, and using the rookies as human shields, when they are the veterans, wouldn't be something his pride would allow. As they walk, the recruit keeps walking when Kim notices something. Then the instructor asks if there is any problem. They hear a loud noise, and when they look at the instructor, he is writhing in agony and falls to the ground foaming at the mouth. The other instructor proposes to go to him, but Kim tells him not to, saying that even if he goes now, there is no way to save him. It's no use anymore. He's already done for. And the other one also falls to the ground writhing. Kim tells everyone to stay back, as if they get closer, they will meet the same fate. Then, he thinks it's nothing serious and that they just fainted, and says he's not surprised, saying he knew he smelled something familiar. He grabs the two instructors and throws them back towards the recruits, telling them to hold on and stay close to the exit. The bald recruit asks where he is going, saying that it's dangerous, pointing out that even the instructors fainted, saying that he might die, but Kim walks away, ignoring the warnings. However, Kim keeps thinking that he's very excited, that he could die right now, saying that it exists on Earth, the demonic energy, explaining that this was the reason the instructors fainted. He says it's no surprise that the awakened instructors fainted. The warriors in Asgard are covered by a special protection that shields them from demonic energy, allowing them to face monsters, but he says it's much more lethal for ordinary humans. However, demonic energy for dark mages is like a charger for a phone with no battery. And so, he reaches the depths of the cave, noticing that this is the source of the dense demonic energy. He thinks it's quiet, and he can't find any trace of monsters anywhere, but he looks up, asking the monster if it really thought it could release so much demonic energy and remain hidden when facing a dark mage. He says he never dreamed of finding a shadow hound there, and says you can't assume they are the same monster just because they share the same name, as they are an indescribably stronger species than a regular hunting dog. He says the first time he encountered one of them was a year after being summoned to Asgard, and he nearly died that time. The protagonist simply winds up a punch, thanking it for the meal, and throws the monster away. But after defeating it, he thinks that the smell of the blood is still disgusting and reflects on the immense amount of demonic energy that spills out after its death. And he thinks that's why shadowhounds are so difficult to defeat. It's because they have poisonous blood that makes the skin of normal humans rot when it comes into contact. Thus, he absorbs all that demonic energy, becoming stronger and stronger, but says that, of course, none of this applies to dark mages, and says his phone has 5% battery left. He remembers having seen a demonic dog back in Asgard and wonders why there's one here, as he thought the monsters here on Earth were normal. But looking at the others' reactions, it seems like this is the first time one has appeared. And he says that, even though it's a training camp, no one was prepared, and the possibility of it traveling from another dimension alone to get there doesn't exist. After all, to make a dimensional portal, you'd have to be on the same level as him. And he says that, unless the person is a saint who can use the power of God, it's not something just anyone can do. He thinks it was nothing special, wondering if he's overreacting. But he also asks himself, where's the body? Because he needs proof for his report. And sometime later, the instructor wakes up with all the cadets calling out to him. They are surprised that he's opening his eyes, until the guy gets up screaming, completely freaked out, asking if they're okay or if they got hurt. But they tell him they're fine. The problem is that Kim went into the dungeon alone. He's shocked by this, and they recount everything that happened, and he's surprised that the recruit decided to act alone like that. They confirm that it's true, but one of the recruits asks the trainer to look ahead, and they notice Kim coming back with the monster on his back, asking if everyone's okay. The trainers are shocked that it's a dungeon monster, but they mention that its appearance is a bit different. However, Kim says it looks the same to him and throws the monster on the ground. They're surprised that it was that monster that took them down. Then, they ask if Kim captured it alone, saying that if he was the one who defeated it, it means he's the strongest among them. But they tell them to stop thinking such nonsense. But as they argue, the gate opens again, and the instructor calls Kim, asking if he was the one who defeated that hunting dog alone, and the kid doesn't even need to say anything. With just one look, the instructor understands the answer and tells everyone to leave first, leaving him and the other instructor for last. After making sure that everyone has left, the blockhead approaches Kim. He instructs Kim to report everything that happened inside directly to the commander, without omitting anything, including the fact that the instructors were completely incompetent. As he speaks, the instructor covers his face in shame, admitting that he feels pathetic. He thanks Kim for saving everyone. The protagonist, embarrassed, listens as the instructor says that, as a man, one must own up to their mistakes and failures before leaving through the portal. Before Kim leaves, something unexpected happens. His system window appears out of nowhere, with a message saying that the error has been corrected. Finally, it would be possible to see his status. However, when the long-awaited little window appears, what it reveals is not what he expected. Kim Minjun. I love Rumi Nuna, founder of the doctrine. In the guy's system, It's written that he thinks about Rumi Nuna when he's alone in his room. And the worst part, she's a game character. The worst part of all is that, in Asgard, he remembers, others could see his status window. And with that written there, it wasn't a good look. But what's in the past stays in the past. The problem now is that his stats are trash, and that makes no sense. He knew that dimensional travel would consume a lot of energy, but it wasn't supposed to turn him into a manaless amoeba. Moreover, of his skills, only one remains, and his level dropped. He is, literally, a piece of crap now, like a level 1 dark mage. The protagonist realizes that, like this, it's going to be hard to reach his goal. But thinking that in Asgard he started as a cockroach and became the greatest dark mage of all time, doing it again here should be easy. If he wants to help the gaming industry recover, he needs to regain his peak power soon. Once again, games motivating someone. Show this to your parents now, so they understand why gaming is good. On the same day, Kim went to report what happened, and he did so, telling everything exactly as it was. This made the protagonist quite famous within the corporation. Many recruits wondered if he would become a sergeant in record time. Meanwhile, in the commander's office. "Pleasure to meet you, Recruit Kim. Commander, why is this guy here alone with you in the office?" The commander dismissed the person and then revealed that he wanted to confirm if it was indeed Kim who had handled that dungeon. After the confirmation, he made a proposal. The commander said that Kim was the best soldier in the training field and commented, "Cranes are amazing when compared to chickens. Here, there are those who are like cranes among chickens and stand out a lot from the others. There are humans who are above average, but also those who stand out even among those who stand out, turning the cranes into chickens too." What the hell is this guy talking about? The commander explained that normally it would only be possible to attempt a promotion after a year of experience, but for someone of Kim's caliber, that would be a waste of time. With his authority as a leader, the commander could make an exception if Kim agreed to volunteer as a hunter in Chorwon. He asked if Kim accepted, but received no response, and a deafening silence filled the room. The commander, thinking that offering a promotion in exchange for going to Chorwon was too little, started to worry. Chorwon was known as the Frozen Hell. No one wanted to go there because it snowed every day, dungeons appeared out of nowhere, and you had to stay on the front line. It was a place with terrible weather and even worse monsters. But Kim's silence wasn't because of that. He was frozen by the idea of an early promotion, which fit perfectly into his plan to rise quickly in his career. Just when the commander was about to offer more benefits, Kim simply said he accepted. "You're really going?" "Yes, sir. I'll go to that place." He missed the chance to take greater advantage of the situation. He was soon taken to the departure location, and all the recruits came to see him off. The bald guy from the dungeon team was sad about his friend's departure and cried, asking him to call. After a moment of drama, the other recruits finally left. Kim said goodbye to his comrades, thinking that he was already tired of all the noise. But suddenly, everything went silent, and he was alone, not knowing where to go. That didn't last long. An army truck suddenly arrived, and someone asked, "Are you the rookie?" The giant did a little dance move and told Kim to follow him. On the way to the base, inside the truck, Kim began to reflect. His life as a soldier was starting now, no longer as a recruit. It was very likely that things would get tough from now on, even for him. But the hardest thing for him would be enduring the bullying in the barracks with the newbies. The protagonist comments that the bigger danger is that he might end up hitting others there and getting into trouble for it. Look at that, the protagonist's concern is hitting the wrong people. The weak and cowardly protagonists from other stories are far from this guy. Upon arriving at the Invincible Hunters unit, the first thing he notices is that there is no snow, even though they said there would be. The officer who brought him simply throws him into the barracks and tells them to take care of the rookie. The recruits' eyes light up and they immediately ask for Kim's name and why he chose that place. Kim talks about his ambitions, saying that he wants to rise quickly through the ranks on the front lines, which is why he chose that place. It seems that this type of behavior is not common. I guess these guys aren't here for the same reason. They say Kim is crazy. And then the more important questions begin. Do you have a sister? A girlfriend? Is your mother single? Do you have any talents? Annoyed, the protagonist replies that he can do push-ups with just one finger and that he can show them. One of the recruits says that's not a talent, while another wants to see if he can really do it. Their expressions change when, in front of everyone, Kim starts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 79, 397. He does upside down push-ups. And at that exact moment, Sergeant Lee Sung-ho, the guy who recruited Kim in Chapter 3 and didn't like him, enters the place. And the other two recruits, soldiers, incredibly, joke around with the sergeant as well. They are ordered to leave, and on their way out, they curse the superior. The sergeant sent the recruits away just because he wanted some peace. So much so that he pulls out his phone and starts watching a new anime, which surprises Kim with the difference between this place and the previous training camp. While watching the anime, the sergeant tells Dong Jin that he should educate the newcomers arriving at the barracks, and then goes off to work. Dong Jin does his job and shows Kim around, explaining how things work, and even buys him food, showing that they can use the store. Dong Jin explains that normally only sergeants or higher ranks can use the store, so Kim needs to rise in rank soon to use it too. Additionally, there is a computer room. Kim didn't care much about the food, but the computer room infuriated him with its rank restrictions. Dong Jin himself can't use the room either, as he is still a soldier, and it's been 3 years that he hasn't managed to advance to corporal. While Dong Jin and Kim are chatting peacefully, a lazy guy shows up, claiming to be Dong Jin's friend, and starts eating their food. Kim knows this kind of person well. The guy doesn't even bother to hide it, and pretends he's not listening to their conversation. He complains to Dong Jin for buying food for a rookie without inviting him. Annoyed, the protagonist uses his magic, hitting the bully under the table, straight in the stomach. The bully stands up, unable to explain the cause of his pain, and leaves, saying he needs to paint the toilet brown. Before leaving, the dirty guy mentioned the shooting training. Dong Jin explains that they use a KX2 in the corporation, and when you shoot with it, it kicks so hard that it feels like a wild horse bucking. It's the second time they use a horse as an example. The first was the crazy trainer, saying you train recruits like you train horses. The protagonist doesn't care much about this. In Asgard, they had a weapon that was like an elephant. In fact, he even gets excited about the shooting practice. The next morning, everyone takes a light, 200 kilometers walk to the shooting range. Damn, I missed a shot. Out of 19 shots, the protagonist misses one and feels disappointed. But to the instructor and the other soldiers, Kim is like a shooting machine with aimbot. Do you really use aimbot magic, Mr. Kim? The record belonged to the red-haired guy, with 14 hits, but the protagonist, on his first time with the wild horse kick gun, hit 19 out of 20 shots. This caught the attention of the superiors of the 2nd Hunters Battalion. The two were impressed, and one of the officers praised the work of Kim Minju, saying he hoped he would keep it up in the future, and that there would be special training for him in the afternoon. Literally, everyone was impressed with the protagonist's results, but Kim was only interested in what kind of special training this was. Dong Jin, who's been at the same rank for 3 years, explains that the special training is done with real monsters. 2 soldiers enter the field together and must defeat all the monsters that appear. But there are cardboard civilians scattered throughout the field, and if a soldier hits one of them, they fail the training. Dong Jin says that he doesn't need to be afraid of the special training monsters because he always keeps them under control, and they'll be watching too. Kim gets excited about the training being with real monsters, asking if it's not going to be way too fun. So, while they eat, Dong Jin keeps praising him, but Kim says that he also did very well, as he hit 13 shots. However, the kid says he's just being humble, saying that it's nowhere near good, especially for Sergeant Lee Sung-ho. He says that in his unit, you have to hit at least 17 shots, but Kim thinks that 10 shots was the minimum in his previous unit, saying that's enough for him. He asks if that means he's the top one there, and Dong Jin says he's sure Kim will do well in the special training too. But Kim says that since this training can be done in pairs, he would like to do it with Dong Jin, but Dong Jin says he doesn't think so, as it's difficult for that to happen since it's the superiors who decide. Kim asks if he's serious, questioning what criteria they use to form pairs. Then Dong Jin says that, as far as he knows, it seems like it's decided by the latter game, and sometime later, the lieutenant announces that the training will start in 5 minutes. He orders them to put on their bulletproof vests and be on standby. Then, Kim gets ready, and the dirty guy goes to talk to him, saying that the new recruit will be in his team, asking if he's really ready for the training and challenging Kim to see the difference between a corporal and a recruit. At that, Kim wonders if Gwangshik is going to be his partner, thinking that based on how he has approached him so far, he hasn't realized that he's a nobody. Gwangshik keeps looking for trouble, saying that since the minimum time to complete the training is 3 minutes, he asks what Kim thinks about completing it in less time, doubting that he can do it. At this, Kim just looks at him, and Gwangshik asks why he isn't responding, questioning if he's scared, and if he thinks he impressed anyone with those 19 hits at the shooting range. He keeps taunting him, and Kim starts to get furious, asking if he hasn't learned his lesson yet. Then, he says no, promising that he will try hard, but Gwangshik starts saying that he doesn't need to try so hard because this is just a training. But if Kim finishes after him, he loses. He tells Kim to pay close attention to the test and think before entering. So the two move forward, and the lieutenant tells them to face their partners. The lieutenant lets them go, and it's said that 2 people from a group each enter an elevator, and the training only starts when they reach the underground floor. They need to protect the cardboard civilians in tight spaces. This is a special rescue and monster subjugation training, but in reality, it's a competition between the soldiers, which determines which of the two is faster and stronger. The goal is to press the final button of the route before your opponent. At this, Kim looks at the screen to follow the game and wonders why the size of the monsters on the screen is different. Gwangshik explains that the size of the monsters on the screen represents their difficulty, and the more dangerous they are, the bigger the icon. Then he asks if Kim didn't know that. He says that they position 2 monsters for each soldier, but the placed monsters are completely random, and he won't know what they are until he faces them. Thus, one of the soldiers encounters a huge frog, which immediately starts attacking with its own tongue. The dot representing the soldier appears near the monster, and Kim thinks that number 1 started faster, but there are still monsters, and it's hard to know. Meanwhile, number 2 goes against a rat the same size as him, and he says he's going to win because now, after defeating the rat, only 1 monster is left. But he comes face to face with a giant, extremely disgusting worm. He asks what the hell that thing is, while number 1 finishes off the second frog and asks what the hell that is, wondering if it's already over. But then he sees the button in front of him and hits it, managing to finish the course in 2 minutes and 24 seconds. Everyone is surprised, asking if the minimum time will change after that. Then they question if he's going crazy, and number 1 even jokes with his opponent, asking why he took so long and if he was making a weapon. But the opponent says he just had terrible luck this time. As if the delay wasn't enough, he also hit a civilian, and he says he'll win anyway. But number 2 tells him to shut up, and Gwangshik, seeing them arguing, realizes that the two had made a bet on the training. Kim thinks about the bet, wondering if the 2 of them can make one too. Then, Gwangshik asks what he said, and Kim says that, thinking it over, he believes the loser should do whatever the winner wants, saying that it's fairer that way. Gwangshik realizes that Kim is quite confident to the point of betting something with his superior, and he agrees, but says the idea came from the kid. But he asks why he would ask a recruit to do something for him, saying that if he wins, he wants a share of the kid's salary. Kim thinks that the salary deal should work, and he agrees, saying that if he loses, he'll give Gwangshik 3 months of his salary. Gwangshik asks if he's sure, and the atmosphere between the two gets a bit tense. Dongjin watches from a distance, and then the lieutenant calls the next group. The 2 place their bets, and the lieutenant asks if they have anything to say before starting, but they both say no and are released, descending to the ground floor. Down there, Kim thinks that he's a bit irritated by that provocation, but he also thinks that it's no use getting worked up and letting himself be carried away by a provocation. He knows that all he should do is ignore it and move on. After all, he's already an adult. However, he says this while releasing a lot of demonic energy, and with the other soldiers, they begin to focus on the bet happening between the corporal and the recruit. They say there's no way a recruit can win a bet against a corporal. He says that besides that, how will he handle the monsters? But they start to think that the sergeant doesn't really care about it, letting it happen. While the gossip is going strong, an earthquake starts. They complain about what that is, and looking at the screen, they see the first monster heading toward the second. Then they are surprised, but Kim also feels it, reaching the bottom, wondering what that vibration is and what's happening. When he looks, he sees a cyclops with 2 horns, eating the monster that should have been in first place, and he ends up face to face with that huge thing. He's surprised by that, but it's eating another monster. He starts thinking about what's going on, and if he should even be there. When the monster looks at him, Kim sees it pulling the rat out of its mouth and aiming it at the kid, throwing the rat toward him. But Kim quickly dodges, and the only thing he can think about is dinner that night, wondering if it's chicken. He hopes he can finish this quickly so he can go eat. He tells himself that he needs to be careful not to hit the civilians because if he just keeps shooting, he could end up disqualified. The monster raises its hand, winding up a punch aimed at the kid, and at that moment, Kim activates his demonic energy, wondering why these creatures are so annoying. With that, he throws a huge punch against the monster's fist, and the hand of that demonic cyclops explodes into several pieces. While the monster feels intense pain, Kim thinks that it has gotten quieter, and that now he just needs to kill it. But then, When he looks at the monster, he sees its hand regenerating. Instead of regenerating normally, the hand comes back with a green blade and a strange aura. Meanwhile, the rest of the group sees that the recruit is facing a huge monster and wonders what happened and what kind of monster he's fighting. The lieutenant, seeing that, begins to wonder if it's the monster that killed 2 soldiers, calling it the biomechanical eye demon, but then corrects himself, calling it the glutton demon, saying that when it consumes energy, its regenerative power and attack increase rapidly, especially if it keeps eating. But he thinks something is off, saying that it's a monster that never attacks first unless it feels its life is in danger. And he recalls that even when they captured it and put it in quarantine, it almost never did anything. He wonders why it came all the way there. Meanwhile, Kim continues fighting against it, dodging all of the monster's attacks until the kid thinks it never stays still and says it's hard to hit. But he remembers that this is shooting training, so it's better to test the weapon. Thus, he shoots at the eye of the glutton demon, which starts writhing in pain as it's hit. When it falls, Kim thinks that its eye takes time to regenerate, saying that if that's the case, he can keep going until he kills it. But the monster's eye starts to close quickly, and it senses the kid getting closer, swinging its blade up toward Kim. The kid wonders what's happening, but it seems desperate to kill him, wondering if it's because he hit its eye. He questions whether it's reacting to sound, but thinks this is a mess. Then, he is almost hit but barely dodges, and the monster keeps trying to strike him while regenerating its eye. Kim stops its hand, saying this is strange, that he doesn't like how it's delaying him in training. Besides, it just tried to crush him. He gets really furious about this, unleashing his demonic energy. Meanwhile, the lieutenant heads down to see what's going on, thinking it's terrible luck because he can't let an accident like this happen with a recruit who just got sent there. He thinks this is his fault because this type of monster should be something a recruit could handle easily, fearing that Kim could even end up dying in the process. So, he tells Kim not to die while he heads down. On the other hand, Gwangshik, who is running quite frantically, realizing he defeated the 2 monsters in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, doubts that the recruit can beat that time. He thinks it was too easy, wondering what he should do with the idiot's salary. He says that soon he'll be able to travel, but when he arrives, Kim is already looking at the button in front of him. Gwangshik questions what the kid is doing there, and Kim just laughs and presses the button in front of him. Gwangshik is devastated, and the lieutenant arrives at the monster, unsure what to think, wondering what the hell happened there. Sometime later, the 2 of them reach the rest of the group. He wonders if anyone has ever pressed the button in less than 2 minutes, saying that the recruit is incredible, and they are also surprised that he managed to defeat that one-eyed demon alone, saying they didn't expect that. Then, Dongjin approaches him, asking if he got hurt, but Kim says he's fine, that nothing much happened. They keep asking him several questions, and Gwangshik is furious. They recall that they made a bet before entering and remember that Kim won, but Gwangshik comes up and slaps him, asking if he wants a beating. He says that Kim cheated and claims that obviously the bet should be cancelled. Kim questions this, and Gwangshik says it's practically impossible that he came in first place, saying that in the special shooting training, they have to kill 2 monsters and press the button. But Kim asks if he didn't kill the 2 monsters that were in his way. Gwangshik asks how many monsters the recruit killed, and Kim says he only killed 1. Gwangshik gets to his point, saying that this is unfair because if he had only needed to kill 1 monster to finish, he would have finished faster too. He asks Dongjin if he doesn't think it was unfair, and Gwangshik tells him to speak up before he hits him. But Kim starts feeling like this guy is really annoying, saying that even if it seemed like an exception, he only regrets killing that monster with a punch instead of a shot. But he says he wanted to win that bet, and wonders if this had to happen, asking why Gwangshik is taking it out on Dongjin instead of confronting him directly. But then, the lieutenant arrives, asking if he isn't ashamed, questioning whether the recruit didn't risk his life all the same. Gwangshik becomes completely dismissive, asking who the lieutenant thinks he is. Then the lieutenant says that normally that one-eyed demon is very gentle, but it mutates when it eats and senses danger in front of it. He says that the situation Kim faced was much harder than dealing with just 2 not-so-strong monsters. Lee Sung asks if there's anyone there who still doesn't understand. Then Gwangshik asks him to calm down, and questions whether he's trying to pick a fight just because he got promoted. But Lee Sung simply looks at him and says that he's still a piece of crap. At that, Guangxik asks him to stop, saying he doesn't need to embarrass him in front of the kids or get so serious over a joke. Lee Sung responds about the joke, saying that it only became a joke because Guangxik lost. And then he says that, anyway, it must be cold down there, adding that he thought Guangxik was once an incredible veteran and that it's amazing he's stuck in the same place. So Lee Sung asks if the bald man said something. Of course, the fearful man responds that he didn't and that it must be his imagination and that he should let it go. Lee Sung says it could only be a mistake. It hits the bald man deeply. Lee Sung leaves and the soldier doesn't have the courage to say anything else. Later, Kim asks Dong Jin if Sergeant Lee Sung received a special promotion, and Dong Jin confirms it, saying that he too was once a soldier but stood out in the test and rose 2 ranks. However, he says that this special promotion test system no longer exists, explaining that they stopped it because one of the sergeants who had received a special promotion ended up getting injured in a dungeon, and Sergeant Lee Sung-ho was the last to receive that approval. Kim realizes that he won't have the opportunity to get a special promotion, but the kid says there is a way, by rescuing civilians in emergency situations or achieving good results by subjugating a certain number of monsters. He adds that it's not very clear because there aren't many rules for it. After all, only a few people have received special promotions that way. And just as he finishes wishing for that promoted soon, a signal goes off and an alert is issued to the commander's office, saying that they are in an emergency situation. A group of medical bats has appeared in the oil depot, and everyone nearby should rush to the depot and help set up a protective shield. Hearing this, the Psycho Kim gets all excited, wondering if it's for real. Then he talks about the bats, saying that they are bat-shaped monsters, the same size as a child, and they live in groups. He explains that, given their size and strength, they aren't dangerous. The problem is that they can shoot fireballs from their mouths, and the fact that they showed up at the oil depot means it's an emergency where the whole place could end up exploding. So, they begin to wonder how many of those bats there are while the 2 soldiers try to stop them. One of them says he's going to kill them all, but the other guy asks if he's crazy, questioning if he knows that he can't shoot near the oil depot, saying that if they both shoot and the bats spit fireballs, everything there will end up exploding. Then, another one questions if they should just stand by and watch, and his friend says that they haven't gotten too close to the depot yet, so they'll keep an eye on things. The 2 are desperate, and clearly don't know what to do since nothing like this has happened since they arrived there. Then, Crazy Kim shows up, saying he's going to draw their attention. The 2 soldiers are surprised that the kid is there, but they question what he thinks he's going to do without any equipment, ordering him to go back right away. Kim thinks about the equipment, wondering if it's the right time to worry about that, saying that his concern now is getting a promotion using those creatures. He says that the title of Recruit Who Handled an Emergency Alone will help him monopolize that situation and get that title as a bonus. He wonders if it will be possible, but then remembers that one-eyed demon he killed and thinks that, as expected, the monsters start reacting to his demonic energy. He says that all of them will be his, and the soldiers start arriving slowly at the scene. But when they look ahead, they wonder what's happening and freeze in fear. Another guy who is coming up behind questions what they are doing, telling them to stop chatting and keep moving. But they speak to Lee Sung, asking him to look ahead, saying that Recruit Kim is killing all the bats. Lee Sung is shocked but yells at everyone, asking if they're just going to stand there while Kim handles the group of bats alone. While Kim grabs one of the bats and rips it in half, he thinks it takes too long to kill them one by one and wonders if there's a better way to do this. But while he's thinking, Lee Sung approaches him, shouting, telling the kid to stop trying to play the hero and get out of there, saying he's not even using proper equipment. However, obviously, Kim ignores what he's saying because all the bats will be his, and he's not going to share with anyone. But then he notices what Lee Sung is wearing and wonders if that's what he needs. So, the kid uses his demonic energy once again to make another soldier feel like he's about to crap himself. Lee Sung starts wondering what's going on with his stomach, and Kim, being as cynical as possible, goes up to him, asking what's happening and if he's okay. Lee Sung says he's fine, but the kid questions if he's really okay, thinking he looks quite strange. Lee Sung tries to play it off, saying he's going to leave, and the kid just takes his weapon, telling him not to worry because this will be over soon. He's quite pleased to have gotten that electric baton, saying that now he's going to have some real fun. Then, he begins exterminating the bats, and everyone is shocked by what they are seeing. After all, he's killing all the bats by himself. But while he's increasing his kill count, a soldier looks up and sees that one of the bats is aiming its fireball right where it shouldn't. He alerts the other soldiers who have their guns in hand, telling them to shoot, saying that this time he allows them to shoot at it. They try to shoot that bat, but Crazy Kim appears behind it, saying that this isn't a good place to play with fire, and then kills the creature before it can do anything. The soldiers below wonder how he got up there and also question if anyone has an idea of how many he's killed. They finally activate the protective shield and order a check to make sure all points of the depot are protected. After gathering all the bats, they wonder what to do with them and call Lee Sung, questioning where those bats came from, saying that they couldn't detect any of them on the radar. While he's asking about the report, starts to notice a strange smell coming from Lee Sung, still from the protagonist's magic. He also asks if they electrocuted all the bats, wondering how many of them there are. Lee Sung says it seems like 30, and he thinks that the commander is very busy and that he came there only because of the smell. It's said that even if you're not specialized in combat, an operations captain should guide the combat, but he only appeared after everything was over, wondering if he's sure he wasn't watching the radar in the control room. Then, the commander asks if it was Lee Sung who electrocuted all those bats, saying that he'll mention his actions to the commander, but Lee Sung directly states that he wasn't the one who did it. The man is surprised and asks who it was, wondering if there's anyone in that unit who knows how to use an electric baton besides him. He says that those bats weren't killed using just the electric baton, saying that a single person killed all of them with their bare hands and asks him to put that in the report. At that, the commander asks if he's trying to make a joke, as it's hard to believe that one person tore up all those bats alone. And besides, if it wasn't Lee Sung who did it, who else could have? Then, Kim arrives, talking to Lee Sung, saying that he came to return the electric baton that he had lent him earlier. He says that he might have overused the baton, wondering if he went too far. The next day, the commander asks him to be honest, questioning if he had been there before, but the kid says no. Then, the commander asks if he was doing anything before all of that happened. The kid again says no, and the commander tells him that, since that's the case, he shouldn't do anything as reckless as what he did yesterday. He says that the kid got lucky this time, but hunters like them never know what tomorrow might bring. Kim thinks that, luck or not, he will stay in that battalion. The commander says that, as he knows, the Hunters Division is special, and the difference between it and normal troops is that only 4 battalions fight like they do. He says that every battalion under the division's control has a small number of hunters within the entire army. Kim thinks that, obviously, not just anyone can be a hunter, but he wonders why the commander is suddenly talking about this. Then, the commander asks if he knows the reason behind all of this, and the kid shows that he doesn't. The commander says it's because, unlike regular soldiers, everyone there is special. He explains that, of course, not all of them go to the front line, and that there are soldiers specialized in administration, certain monsters, combat tactics, and so on. But the kid recalls that one commander who doesn't seem to be good at anything. The commander in front of him says that this is how things work there, and hunters are promoted based solely on their skills and performance there. Kim says that when the commander called him, he thought he'd hear something good from him, but wonders if this is just a lecture, especially since he did something good. The commander asks if he was expecting to be called in that morning and tells Kim to pay attention, saying that on that day, the hunter who has killed the most monsters in the 104th Hunters Division is arriving. A giant guy gets out of a car, and the commander says he's coming to visit their battalion. So, everyone in the battalion gets ready to receive him. When he greets them, Lee Sung asks if it was the kid who led the situation that happened there yesterday, saying he did a good job. The kid, all stiff, thanks him for the compliment, and everyone around comments that just his eyes are scary. But Kim starts wondering what the strength level of a hunter with 2 stars must be. Then, he quickly approaches Kim, grabbing the kid's hand, and he notices that the guy's handshake is very strong. However, to put him at ease, he gives 2 pats on the protagonist's back, saying that they can relax. He asks the colonel if he knows where the bats came from last night, and he says yes, explaining that it was confirmed they came from a hill 1.2 kilometers north of the unit. He says they managed the situation well, but that they will continue investigating the issue. That guy says he's going to write a report and send it to the general. He asks if there was any issue with the radar, but one of the commanders says that the radar didn't pick up the bats until they got close to the unit. They confirm that it wasn't a problem with the equipment, so they're investigating if it was a blind spot near the unit. Then, the superior says the problem lies in the quantity, asking the logistics division to install another radar, and they agree right away. And then the superior speaks to Kim, saying that it's true he was very brave yesterday and thought quickly to help in that situation. But he questions if the kid wasn't wasn't only thinking of himself, saying it could have been dangerous. Then, he says he's sorry, thinking that he's in trouble. The superior stands up, asking if he really killed 30 of them alone, and the kid says yes. Then, the superior says that if he hadn't run there and reacted so quickly, the whole place would be in ashes now. He says the kid did a good job and that he's going to give him a reward for this great feat. Then, he simply takes the rank insignia from the kid's chest and puts another one in its place, congratulating him on the promotion. He says that normally they go through a very bureaucratic process to do this, but he deserved what he got. The kid simply thanks him, and the superior asks for him to be given 2 nights and 3 days of leave. Kim thinks that he never thought he'd get all this with a promotion, wondering if he'll actually get to take a vacation, thinking that things are getting really interesting. As he leaves the room, one of Kim's superiors speaks to him, saying that he barely arrived and they didn't even have a proper conversation, but the kid has already achieved great things, saying that he'll receive many compliments thanks to Kim. Then, he asks if it's the first time the kid is going home since enlistment, asking what he plans to do outside. So, the kid simply leaves, super excited, saying he's going to dive into the computer dungeon. He says that he even needs to stop by home, but there's no internet there, so he's going to spend his 2 nights and 3 full days in that place. But as he enters the establishment, a man who appears to be drunk speaks to another who is seated, asking why he's there. Then, the seated man asks what he wants, and the drunk man tells his brother to keep quiet because that lousy soldier might hear them. He says that he needed to enter that cave and do his job there, questioning why they wouldn't let him do it. After all, he even got authorization and paid for it, but his brother says they went in and took complete control of the area, saying that there's some kind of poison in that place. He says it's giving them a lot of trouble, mentioning that it might be dangerous to go in there. But then, the hothead says that all they need is to put on a gas mask and go in. At this, Kim questions where they are talking about, and the two look at each other, clearly startled. Sometime later, after apparently getting the information out of them, he arrives at another location with a small truck. The driver asks if he's getting off right there, and the kid says yes, saying that he's already helped him a lot by bringing him there. When Kim thanks him for the ride, the driver says he's sure the army guys will block his entry from there on. He also asks about the talk the kid mentioned about taking care of the mountain situation, wondering if it's true. Kim says that starting tomorrow, they might even be able to go back to working in the mountain. But while they listen to the kid talking, they glance at his rank insignia and don't take him too seriously, telling him to take care. They also tell the kid that if anyone asks who brought him, he should say it wasn't them. So, when the two leave, Kim looks at the mountain, seeing a lot of demonic energy in that place. He thinks about leaving behind the money for using a computer to go all the way to Watchin, and says that the smell is familiar and that it's mana. Then, he feels excited about this discovery. Meanwhile, 2 soldiers guard the entrance to the dungeon, and he looks down from above, noting that the only entrance to the mountain is blocked. But he wonders why there are only 2 soldiers there and says that, in this case, he's not going to just stand still with something so good right in front of him. He then starts affecting the 2 soldiers, and both of their stomachs begin to hurt simultaneously. They try to hold it in, but they say they won't be able to endure it. One of them has the brilliant idea to leave the place for a moment, thinking that no one comes by there anyway, and says it'll only take about 5 minutes. But as soon as he leaves, Kim appears, taking advantage of some of that demonic mana. However, when he gets there, he's shocked to find that there aren't any monsters around. So, he wonders what all this mana is about. He says whatever, saying that now everything there is his, and he starts absorbing the demonic energy from the place. Thus, his magic status starts increasing by 1 point at a time, and he says this is incredible. The system tells him that by absorbing a certain amount of demonic energy, his corruption ability becomes stronger. As he absorbs the required amount of demonic energy, his Night Steps ability is unlocked. He gets more and more excited as he finally starts to regain his strength from the other world and thinks this is one of the best abilities he could have obtained. He says he can summon a shadow with Night Steps and that he can hide in the shadows to easily kill a target. It's an excellent ability. To maintain the summoning, all he needs to do is feed it a bit of demonic energy now, and then because it's an independent shadow, he calls forth the shadow, and it's definitely much smaller than either he or Kim expected. He asks himself, what the hell is this? Wondering if it's because of the penalty of traveling between dimensions or because his mana status is still low. He says it's really a pain, mentioning that the shadow is so weak that if he leaves the cave, he bets it'll disappear because of the sun. But then he realizes that since it's small, it can hide anywhere. At that moment, the shadow starts speaking, saying it's hungry and asking for some demonic energy. A few days later, Kim returns from his trip, and everyone starts congratulating him because he is the fastest promoted combatant in the history of the battalion. He wonders if the commander actually let him travel, considering he even personally swapped out the kid's badge. At that moment, Kim looks back, seeing Dongjin, and says he bought him some lotion. And the kid is all happy, saying he's going to use it well. At that moment, Guangxik arrives, asking since when anyone is so nice in that place, and says he almost cried seeing their friendship. Then, he asks if the protagonist bought the magazine he wanted, and the kid says yes, but he actually just messed with him. Then, the red-haired guy notices he's that newbie, asking if he passed by the administrative wing and saw the list of candidates for the promotion exam, questioning if he signed up. Then, his friend asks since when a newbie can take the exam, saying he hasn't even been there for a year. The red-haired guy asks if the commander decided that, even though he just got there. Everyone starts to pay attention, and Kim says that when he was at the training center, the colonel made him a suggestion. He tells them everything, and they are all in disbelief because the colonel sent him to this place to take the promotion exam a year early. They say it's crazy and notice that he accepted the proposal and is going to take the promotion exam that year. If he passes, it will be even crazier. One of them says that everyone who is taking the promotion exam on Saturday will have reinforcement classes the next day. He says the kid can even train with his melee weapon, telling him to work hard. At that, Kim wonders what this melee weapon training will be, questioning if he'll be able to use a weapon other than firearms. Then, the time for the class arrives, and the instructor says he's going to review how the promotion exam will be. He tells those who have taken the test before and didn't pass not to think of it as their last chance. For those taking the test for the first time, they should pay close attention, saying that the promotion exam is divided into two main parts. One is the written exam, and the other is the practical exam. The written exam is pretty easy to pass if you have basic knowledge of the test. By comparison, it's like the driver's license test. Then, Kim leaves the room and wonders if it's even that important, saying that in practice, it's about weapon proficiency and strength testing. They also need to see his combat skills against monsters. He says he knows he can pass, but if he scores the maximum points, he might get other benefits. He wonders if he should really take this exam seriously. The next day, they prepare to start the melee weapon training. The instructor calls everyone and tells them to pick up just one melee weapon. Everyone rushes to grab one, and the instructor tells them to just choose one in front of them so they can start training quickly. He tells them not to mess around because now, in this training, they will learn the basics of melee combat according to the hunter's manual. However, he says that, honestly, not everything they need to know is written in the manual, and that everything they'll learn is just the basics. Then, they need to find their own fighting style, but he says that the basics are the most important part, so they should pay attention and focus exactly on what he's doing. With that, he starts performing various strikes, cuts, and movements using the sword. Kim thinks that he understands why the test uses melee weapons, remembering when he faced the one-eyed monster, thinking that it's foolish to always rely on firearms when dealing with monsters. So, they all start trying, but the only one who can do something decent is Kim. He thinks that the combat techniques in Asgard were better, and precisely because of that, he can do anything here. Then, the instructor tells everyone to stop, asking Kim to come to him. The kid steps up, wondering what's happening, climbing onto the stage and standing next to the instructor. He says he was observing Kim's movements during the training, and the way he handles the sword is very strange. The instructor says that's why they will pay attention to how Kim is doing it. The kid is shocked by this but starts performing in front of everyone. After a tiring session, Kim is furious, as he suddenly became a training assistant. But the instructor goes up to him, saying it must have been tough, but they are pleased with the kid's progress, telling him to eat it all by himself. The kid is surprised that the instructor is carrying that out of nowhere. Then Dongjin approaches Kim, saying that his demonstration was incredible and asking if he can give him some tips during the break. Kim then asks why him. Dongjin says he knows it's the first time he started training and that his melee weapon is also a sword, but he's not satisfied with the way he's been using it. So, he asks if Kim could give him some honest feedback later, and Kim says that if he can help, he doesn't mind doing it. Thus, he watches Dongjin performing with his sword and thinks that, judging by his movements, it seems like the kid has trained a lot. It's obvious that they are standard military techniques, but he says that the problem isn't with the technique, What Dong Jin lacks is confidence. He says he could help him in the easiest way, but it's not the right time for that yet. He says he's going to help Dong Jin become an elite soldier. So, on Saturday, the day of the promotion exam, everyone is training, each in their own corner, and they announce to all soldiers that the hunters taking the promotion exam should go immediately to the main courtyard. They keep repeating the announcement, preparing them, saying that the day has finally arrived. When they get there, the representative notices that everyone is already present and says that they will be under the care of 2nd Lieutenant Kim Keel-min and the commander. He asks them to behave, follow orders, and not forget the report at the end of the day. With that, everyone boards the bus, and inside they are told that the exam will be held in the 105th Division, and they will be heading to Gapyeong, where the battalion is located. During the trip, they should try to study a little more. Inside the bus, Kim hears from two of them that the 4th Female Battalion will also participate, and the other wonders if they will take the exam with them. That crazy guy says that today is the day he'll show off his skills with the weapon he's been practicing with for a year. His plan is to impress one of them and get their number. Kim thinks he just needs to pass. Arriving at the 105th, they go straight to the exam room, and everyone is separated. Meanwhile, a very stern guy addresses them, saying that all the hunters present there from the 2nd Battalion of the 104th Division passed, except for Jeonwook. He tells everyone to go directly to the practical test, except for Jeonwook. Everyone laughs at him, and on the way to the practical test, they wonder what the hell that was, since the written test was way easier than the driver's license test. Meanwhile, Sun Yunseo keeps an eye on Kim. From outside, they listen to a tedious speech while they must stand at attention, trying to stay awake. Until the guy giving the speech says that, lastly, in that exam, there are some people participating under special conditions, mentioning Corporal Kim Minju and Sun Yunseo from the 104th Division. He says that even though either of them has been in service for more than a year, they are already there. Kim begins to wonder if there is someone else besides him in the same situation. At that moment, the speaker asks none of them to do anything foolish to avoid embarrassing themselves in front of the rookies. Everyone then starts to focus on Kim and looks for him, until Yunseo looks back, locking eyes with the boy, noticing that he is already a corporal, turning all red. However, he doesn't even understand the girl's intention. Then, Captain Jong Sankyo steps forward and says that from that moment on, they will test their strength, speed, and energy. The first is the strength test, which is very simple. He says that all they need to do is push their test volunteer, a giant guy who looks like a two-door refrigerator. At that moment, Kim recalls the test he's already taken and wonders if all that training will really be useful for anything. They are told that they have 1 minute to do it, and to score a perfect 100 points, they must push him 10 meters. The test starts as soon as their name is called, and the first one is First Class Steward Jin Hyuk. He takes off his shirt and starts to push the man, but he can't even move him. With just his shoulder, the test volunteer throws him far away, and Jin Hyuk scores 0 points and fails. It's said that if they don't score at least 40 points in that test, they will be immediately disqualified. Everyone is terrified, and those who go after him manage almost nothing, scoring 10 points, 20 points, and 0 points. Everyone is really angry, and the captain starts to notice that no one has passed yet. Then it's Yunseo's turn, and she manages to score 50 points by pushing the man back 5 meters. Everyone is impressed by the girl's strength and says she's the first to pass. The most impressive thing is that she's beautiful. Then, they wonder how she managed it, asking if that's her father, but they end up blaming it on genetics. At that moment, the girl looks directly at Kim, and he wonders if she's doing it because she received the same special exception as him. Then Kim is called, and he goes straight up to the man, wondering if he should just do the same as he did with that red stone. He says that if he pushes him to 10 meters, he'll get a perfect score. With that, he simply throws the guy far away against the wall. Everyone is shocked because that walking wardrobe went way beyond 10 meters. So, the captain gives Kim 100 points, leaving Yunseo stunned after giving him that challenging look. He says he thinks he might have overdone it a bit, and then everyone continues, but many are disqualified. After the end, the captain asks them to be quiet as they'll wrap up the strength test there, and he says that the speed test will begin in a few minutes. Those who were disqualified should head to the exit, as another soldier will guide them. They start setting up the speed test and realize they'll have to dodge bullets. The captain tells them to relax because they are only rubber bullets. but it will still hurt a lot if they get hit. So, they need to try to dodge as many as possible, and Kim quickly finds the challenge interesting. The captain says they have 1 minute to achieve a perfect score, and all they need to do is stay within the net area for a full minute. It's a speed test, but if they have enough confidence in their strength, they can even try to stay in the area while being hit. He says that the elimination criterion is 30 seconds, and if they end up leaving the area before reaching 30 seconds or get seriously injured, they will be disqualified. He calls them to start, and then they call Kim. When he looks back, he sees Dong Jin and is surprised. The kid asks, "What's with that face?" asking if he thought he'd be eliminated because of his strength. Kim obviously thought so, but he tries to play it cool. He says that aside from him, the other soldiers have probably already done that test before. Just like him, it's a bit difficult to fail that test. Dong Jin says that this is a unique opportunity to get a good promotion, even though it's a little late for him after trying so many times. Then, he tells Kim something, saying that those rubber bullets are as fast as real bullets, and that you can't take your eyes off them for even a second. You have to keep your eyes on the bullet hole and imagine its trajectory. While they're talking, the first person gets hit, and the guy starts bleeding from his head, needing to be helped out of the area. Then, Kim says that the approval rate for that speed test seems to be really low, but he remembers all the monsters he faced in the other world, noting that it doesn't seem that difficult. As a result, everyone continues failing, and the captain asks why they're so bad at this, saying that they should know that the sergeant promotion exam is so hard that it doesn't even compare to that little game. He says they better improve if they want to take the exam in the future. So, everyone continues to fail. Finally, they call Yunseo, and she starts stretching. The first bullet comes, and she manages to dodge it, continuing to evade several more until she achieves a perfect score without getting hit once. She then returns to the others and looks directly into Kim's eyes. He wonders what's going on, questioning why she's staring at him with such intensity. Then, they call Kim, and he notices that she's still staring, wondering if he did something wrong. He wonders if he should have congratulated or praised her for getting a perfect score, but he can't shake the feeling that her stare is making him uneasy. However, while he's lost in thought, the first bullet comes, and he dodges it quickly, just moving his head. The girl is quite surprised. Kim says that now he's going to show the difference in their skills and begins dodging, making the smallest possible movements, just shifting his body, head, and torso. They notice that he's simply walking around casually while dodging all the bullets. He doesn't get hit by any of them, looking at the girl and smiling at her. Then, at 1 minute and 10 seconds, the test is still ongoing. The captain tells them to stop the test, as he's already achieved a perfect score. After all that, they move on to the final exam. The captain says that the tests are going as expected and that now they will proceed with the energy and physical endurance test. It's said that the final test is actually quite simple. They just need to enter an empty dungeon and come out of it within 40 minutes. Kim says that, during this time, the examiner will wait at the meeting point, and all they need to do is get a stamp on their hand at the end of the dungeon and return. They say that the problem is the distance between the stamp and the path back, so they need to run to complete the test. The captain says that's what he thinks, at least. Then, he wonders why everyone is running together from the start, and why everyone is so nervous, saying that it's a hassle and asking if it wouldn't have been better to put them in the dungeon one by one. Sun Yunseo passes by him, giving him a shoulder bump and staring into his eyes. He notices that she's doing that crazy thing again, wondering what she wants this time. She then challenges him to pick up the pace, running ahead. Kim gets really angry, wondering if she wants to compete with him, and the tension between them grows. He sprints forward, getting closer and closer to her, until he passes her and says that it's no big deal. The girl asks what he's talking about, and he says he's just talking to himself because that's how he is. Then, he takes off running, and she starts to get irritated. He remembers when he first arrived with the other cadets, saying that she barely got there and already had a meeting with the commander. Then, he asks if it's true that she's the daughter of a general and that she has a lot of skills. She starts feeling embarrassed, so the girls assume it's true. After Yunseo goes to change clothes, they say they thought she'd be a little spoiled, but she's quite different. But they still say they're a bit jealous because it seems like the best soldier in their battalion has already been decided. Meanwhile, Yunseo continues changing clothes, remembering Kim breaking that rock, thinking that those girls have no idea what they're talking about. During an activity, Yunseo manages to capture the flag, and her team is very happy. The supervisor announces that the white team successfully captured the blue team's flag with a record time of 3 minutes and 34 seconds. With that, he announces that the white team can take a 10-minute break while the blue team must continue training. Meanwhile, he says that they worked hard and can rest in their places until they are called. At this, The girls on the team say they didn't do much, all because they had the best with them. Yunseo is quite pleased with the praise, but while the soldiers are getting ready, one of them approaches, visibly angry, saying that the record they set during the capture the flag training was broken during the afternoon practice. The girl asks if they know what's the most absurd thing about it, saying the new record is 1 minute and 2 seconds, asking if that even makes sense. They ask whose record it is, and she says it was Kim from the 4th platoon, who broke it alone. Then Yunseo remembers that person and recalls hearing repeatedly about records being broken by Kim in shooting practice and various other tests. As the girl keeps talking about Kim, the others start getting irritated by all his achievements. Yunseo feels down, remembering a moment with her father, and says she wants to become stronger like him. She then remembers when she went to the commander's office. He says that she has worked hard over the past 4 weeks and explains that he called her there because she's the daughter of his former battalion commander, asking how she is. She says she's fine, thanking him for his concern. He asks if she has decided where she'll go after leaving there, saying that since she's been getting good results, he thought it might be good for her to volunteer in a certain division. He then suggests the 107th Division, where General Sun is, but the girl mentions Kim, wanting to go wherever he volunteers. She says that, ever since she was a child, she's been competitive and didn't come there for no reason, saying she gets mad just like a child when provoked, and that guy just makes her feel that way. She remembers everything he's done, and says he even makes her feel jealous. She starts apologizing, saying that if she wants to be strong, she wants to be number 1 and will do it without her father's help. If she finds someone stronger and more knowledgeable than her, she can't help but want to compete with that person. So, she pushes herself to the limit, but when she reaches the end, she finds Kim casually chatting with the stamp officer. She then asks if he broke her record again. He shows her his stamp, asking if she fell asleep on the way there. She gets really angry, demanding to be stamped quickly because she's going to catch up with him, saying she's furious. She arrives after him, almost exhausted, while he is completely at ease. The captain announces that time is up, saying that Kim finished in 29 minutes and took first place, while Yunseo came in second with 32 minutes. The captain starts praising Kim for being incredible, as he achieved a perfect score in everything. The kid just thanks him, and then the captain says they've completed the 3 physical tests, and those who passed can go have lunch and meet in front of the training yard at 1 p.m. Everyone gets excited, and Kim starts making faces at Yunseo, sticking his tongue out at her. The girl is surprised by his action, but when he meets Dong Jin, he starts chatting. She realizes what his personality is like and that, in the end, she fell for his provocation and still lost, but she says it was a lot of fun. She feels much better, puts on her beret, and heads off with the others. On the second day of the practical exam, Dong Jin is facing multiple monsters at once. He manages to take down some pretty easily, but as more come at him, he starts to struggle, defeating one and almost being caught by another. But he dodges and manages to cut down the goblin, which falls, still alive, staring at him. Then, the two come together again, facing each other. Meanwhile, Kim watches from above, noting that the test of proficiency with the main weapon is easier than he thought, since they learned the basics of weapon use in the battalion. All they need to do now is show their skills. They don't need any amazing powers for that. So, anyone who knows the basics with a sword ends up passing the first test. Most of the tests that day involve sword techniques. Even Dong Jin receives a good score, but he still seems a bit down about his numbers. Kim tells him that they also need to fight in one of the tests. So, the goblins charge at him, and he thinks that, in the end, the most important thing there is the ability to handle monsters, which is what they're doing now. They have to use their skill with their main weapon if they want to kill the 4 goblins there. Kim says that this means he will also be risking his life. He then finally manages to kill the 2 goblins, and the captain announces that he killed all the monsters and finished the test in 7 minutes and 52 seconds, saying he can return to his place. However, he is quite upset and frustrated with his score. Kim then comments that he had many opportunities to kill the goblins faster but always seemed to hesitate. Kim thinks that Dong Jin probably doesn't trust his own skills. Feeling down, Dong Jin walks over to Kim. Then, the captain calls Kim, telling him to come down and get ready. Kim thinks he's going to give it his all because today, he needs to unleash everything he's been holding back during these tests. As soon as he gets down there, everyone is shocked because the crazy guy is holding a spiked club. The captain says that no matter how perfect he's been in the other tests, using such a ridiculous weapon in that test is a bit much. He wonders if Kim will really be able to do anything with it. And Kim says that all he needs to do in that test is to land land a single impactful strike. He's excited about this, and when the monsters charge at him, he gathers all his strength, like a hawk hunting a rabbit, and smashes the club down on the 3 monsters. He finishes the test in 4 seconds, and everyone is stunned, realizing that this 24th division truly has the best of its hunters. If he keeps going like this, he'll achieve a perfect score in all the tests, and they say it's the first time this has ever happened. As Yunseo looks at him, he turns his eyes to her as well, laughing and starting to show off down there. She gets irritated, wondering if that idiot still wants to compete. Later in the afternoon, the captain says that they all worked hard during the tests, especially Kim, and mentions that this was the fastest promotion he's ever seen in his life. He says that he was very worried, thinking he'd be the only one in his battalion who wouldn't pass. He adds that the battalion commander will be very pleased to hear how hard they worked and bets that the commander won't believe that Kim passed with a perfect score in all the tests. Everyone is happy for him, asking what he's going to do now and whether he'll use his new status to annoy them. But he just says that it's all good, thinking that now he can do whatever he wants. As everyone boards the bus, he sees Dong Jin and calls him Sergeant. Kim, in turn, thinks that when they get back, they'll train their weapons even more together. When he's about to be the last one to get on the bus, Yunseo tries to talk to him, but the idiot just looks at her rank, thinking that she was also great at handling the monsters before, and that it was obvious she would pass. With that, he sits down and keeps looking at her from inside the bus. Yunseo says that she provoked him during that test and that it would be better to apologize before he leaves. But when she looks, that crazy guy is pressing his face against the window to say something to her. Then, he tells her that she lost to him again and leaves her behind, simply driving away. She thinks that guy is completely nuts. As they head off, people ask him what that was all about, wondering if Yunseo is interested in him, saying that during the tests, they even kept staring at each other. They ask if something happened, and he says they just ran together, but he ended up leaving her behind. They feel disappointed, realizing that they were just overthinking things instead of actually being interested in each other. But they ask what happened, noting that Yunseo is the most popular girl in the entire 104th division, and questioning if he's not interested in her. They ask if his type of woman is different, wondering if he's serious, and ask what his ideal type of woman is. He thinks that it's annoying and says that it's definitely not her. They get irritated, insisting that he should tell them what his type is, and he says it's Rumi. Everyone is left wondering what the hell he's talking about, and he says that Rumi is the most beautiful woman in the world, asking if they don't know her. Then, they realize she's a character from that crazy guy's game and feel disappointed. Later that night, everyone stuffs themselves with chicken. They say it's the first time the commander has done this, wondering if he's ever been this happy before. They tell Kim to eat a lot, saying it's all thanks to him. They mention that he already has 3 bars, saying that soon the kid will advance further. Then, Lee Sung suddenly barges in with a box of bottles, saying he needs 2 of them to come to the break room. Dong Jin says it's fine, but another guy asks why he wants them to go. Lee Sung says he was preparing his report for the administrative team, and they asked him to celebrate because a squad member achieved a perfect score in the promotion exam. But as he speaks, they notice that Lee Sung has beer and realize that he's not planning to drink it all by himself. However, he says that it's a gift from the general to Kim, and that they shouldn't even be there. At that moment, the red-haired guy says he knew things would turn out like this as soon as the kid was placed in that idiot's squad. Later that night, while walking alone, Kim sees that there's no one around and summons his shadow. The shadow appears all excited. He asks how she's doing, mentioning that when he first summoned her, he just called her back because she was very different from what he had imagined. But even so, he ends up having a great idea, saying that what he needs now isn't an assassin shadow, but something that can carry out a mission for him. He says he has the perfect task for that little shadow, a place where he can't move around freely because he needs to gather information. He tells her to stop playing around, saying that from now on, she'll have to sneak around and follow people with high ranks, and as soon as she gets good information, she should run back to him to report. Just as he was about to say what else he wanted to know, the shadow suddenly starts demanding the cursed energy. He says he almost forgot about that, and after giving her the energy, the shadow leaves, all happy. He warns her to be careful, as she must not get caught under any circumstances. The protagonist starts thinking that he's a bit worried about that little thing running around, as if someone from the units hears something, they might issue an emergency alert. While he's thinking about this, someone approaches him from behind, asking if that's where he was. Kim is completely startled and decides to lie, turning around and saying it's been a while since he drank like this, mentioning that he went outside to get some fresh air. At this, Lee Sung asks if he's a lightweight when it comes to drinking, but the kid says that's not it. After all, black mages aren't affected by alcohol or poison. It's no use. He says his body detoxifies itself. Lee Sung congratulates him on the promotion but tells him not to slack off just because he got it, telling him to keep working hard. He adds that since the kid isn't weak with alcohol, he should come back and drink some more before they finish all the bottles. Kim thinks that. Luckily, he didn't see anything, realizing he needs to be more careful. He thinks to himself that the longer he stays there, the more he starts taking that life seriously, and he doesn't like that very much. The next day, two high-ranking officers talk about how it looks like they struck gold this time. They mention that, looking at that list, it seems like just a bunch of idiots doing the bare minimum, but one of them has a perfect score. One of them already knew who it was, referring to Kim, saying that he did well, especially in the monster test, with a record of just 4 seconds. Then, he talks about that guy, mentioning that Cho Song from the training center spoke very highly of him before too, but the kid turned out to be much better than he expected. In the oil depot incident, he was also impressive, and they confirmed that Kim was the first to arrive there and resolve the situation. It's mentioned that it's been less than a month since he joined the battalion, and everything he's done so far has been fair and square. They say this guy seems to have a bright future ahead. He says it's only a matter of time before rumors start spreading, and when that happens, that place will start keeping an eye on him too. The other man asks if he's talking about the Special Hunter Brigade, saying that even for Kim, that place might be a bit much. But the superior tells him to relax, saying he knows what he's talking about and trusts in Kim's potential, mentioning that he's seen many hunters in his life, and among them, there are some monstrous guys who could be called legends of the hunter army. Among them, a new monster might be born. Apparently, Kim was thrown into the middle of a desert, surrounded by lizard men, golems, and a bunch of other tribes. In the midst of all of them, this crazy guy is just standing there with his spiked club, wondering if he should start the massacre. Then, the next day, everyone in Kim's room is struggling with a hangover. Meanwhile, he arrives, singing happily. A friend asks how he's feeling so good. After all, he drank a lot. They say he's a monster, and when he looks back, it's Lee Sung. The kid asks if he's feeling okay, and he says yes, mentioning that he always feels better after sweating so much. At this, Kim realizes that Lee Sung is truly a soldier, and Lee Sung thinks of something, asking if Kim has been to the gym yet. The kid says he hasn't, and Lee Sung says that since he couldn't use the gym before, he should take advantage of it now. Kim says he will, and Lee Sung remembers to tell him that the simulation machine in their battalion is also great, and that he should give it a try. This totally gets Kim's mind racing, and he starts thinking about the virtual reality room he's heard so much about. So, he heads to the second training room, and when he enters, he notices that it's very different from what he expected and starts asking what they have there. A list of monsters appears before him. He selects an ogre, and they ask him to specify the number of monsters. He's thrilled, saying the more, the better. However, the machine tells him that he has exceeded the number of monsters, saying that the maximum he can request is only 30. He says it's a pain, mentioning that he wanted to kill as many as possible but that he'll have to do things the machine's way. Then, it asks him to select a weapon. He's surprised to find he can choose any of them. He says that now that he's finished choosing, it's time to get into the game. He puts on the VR headset and finds himself in the desert. The monsters start appearing around him, and he says it's amazing, immediately starting to kill them all, saying that it feels incredibly real. As he goes on pummeling the monsters, he thinks this is a lot of fun, and they all end up dead around him. But he starts thinking that 30 monsters are too few for him, as it ended way too quickly, and he wonders what will happen if he does something a little different. So, he decides to choose 30 units of each monster, goblins, stone golems, and lizard men. They all charge at him, and he says, "Now this is it. Now I can really have some fun." When the countdown ends, all of them rush at him, and he says it'll be a pleasure to fight them all. Then begins the one-sided massacre, using only that spiked club, killing all the monsters with the greatest ease in the world, destroying them one by one. After some time, he finishes off the last monster and looks at the catastrophic scene around him. The computer announces the end of the battle and the end of the simulation. He takes off the headset, saying that it was incredible and that it's one of the most fun things he's found around there. Then, the system informs him that the basic skill melee weapon has been created. He wonders what that means. The basic skill melee weapon increases his proficiency with melee weapons, and he wonders why he got it out of nowhere, but says it's not a bad thing. He mentions that he thought he would gain gain a skill related to weapons, but this is great. He also says that now he doesn't even need to go looking for dungeons because he gained that skill just by training there. Kim says that whenever he has free time, he can come here to have some fun. But when he leaves the room, he sees Dong Jin. Dong Jin asks what that was about, but Kim doesn't quite understand. Dong Jin starts pointing to the scoreboard with the latest results from the second training room, and all of Kim's results are displayed there. Dong Jin begins to ask if his friend killed all those monsters alone in the simulation. Kim thinks about making up an excuse but just asks if Dong Jin wants to check it out for himself. However, Dong Jin is suspicious, knowing that he can't enter that room. But Kim says it's no big deal and that he can go in, wishing him good luck. Still, Dong Jin keeps insisting, asking Kim if he's trying to hide something. Kim says of course not, but Dong Jin claims he's still hungover. Kim says he'll feel better if he sweats a little, then locks Dong Jin inside. But while they're messing around, Guangxik shows up and sees the results from inside, in total disbelief.
A few moments later.
A while later, Guangxik goes to the dorms and starts asking where Kim is. One of them says that everyone went to the storage room to get tools to clear the snow from the battalion. Then, Sergeant Kim says he'll stay at the gym until they start removing the snow. The guy who was doing the report realizes that he accidentally emphasized Kim's rank, which makes Guangxik think he messed up. But he just tells Kim that the battalion commander is looking for him. Kim runs off quickly, thinking he'd better get there before the commander gets mad at him. Meanwhile, he asks what they're up to. The two guys make a little suspense, asking if he wants to know, and say that they're talking about a betting pool on when Kim will be promoted again. They're all placing their bets, ranging from 6 months to 2 years. They ask if he wants to join in, saying that the prize is a full month's salary. Guangxik asks why they always do this kind of thing, and one of them says that another guy bet that Kim will be promoted in 6 months. Guangxik wonders how the hell someone could be promoted with only 6 months of service. But then, another guy complains, saying that's his bet, adding that Kim isn't a normal guy. Guangxik looks at it, and also writes something down on the paper. They're surprised, asking if he's serious, if he's really choosing that, and he says that it's worth an entire month's salary. That annoys them, and they joke that he's worse than the others because he thinks Kim will be promoted even sooner. Meanwhile, at the gym, Kim keeps lifting weights, and the guy is absolutely ripped. Check out those lats, man. Straight from leg day, he goes into biceps training. Then, he throws the dumbbell onto the ground. He says that he's been training for days, but his stats haven't changed. He mentions that in Asgard, he had a skill that was actually useful, which he misses because it always increased his stats. He wonders if there isn't any skill like the otherworldly hero power here, saying that raising his stats has been way too hard. But then, he notices that the system is saying something to him. The skill's strength has been created with rank E, and it's said that it increases his strength stat by 5 points. He says it's pretty basic, but it's better than nothing, and he adds that now he can finally increase his stats faster. Then, the guy who was scared of Guangxik comes up to him, apologizing for showing up like this, but says that the commander is looking for him. Kim, still happy with the new skill, just agrees, leaving the guy totally confused. He wonders if Kim stayed there the whole day. Kim heads straight to the commander, reporting for duty, saying that he heard they were looking for him. The commander nods at him, saying that's right, but it's nothing serious. They'll just go to the council room for now. Then, he asks how life as a sergeant has been treating him, mentioning that it's been a week already. Kim says that it's actually been kind of fun, and also congratulates the commander on his promotion. The commander says that Kim saved him during that incident with the monsters, and thanks him greatly for that as well, but Kim says it was nothing. Then, the commander explains that he called him there for a reason, for resolving the monster problem and achieving a perfect score on the exam. The battalion commander gave him this, and says he hopes Kim won't be disappointed with receiving just that, mentioning that they in the hunter unit don't usually hold formal events for these things. Then he receives a commendation, stating that the soldier above is being awarded this citation for excellent military service. The commander asks him not to worry, saying that the citation has been properly validated. Kim asks what that means. He wonders if, by receiving more commendations, he could get promoted again. The commander says he thinks so, but mentions that earning commendations like that isn't easy, and not many hunters receive commendations. He adds that hunters with multiple commendations are already quite rare, but Kim asks if he'll be promoted if he manages to get 10 of them. The commander thinks to himself that this isn't a loyalty card. A few days later, they head back to a portal entrance, and are told to grab their weapons, stay on guard, and wait. They explain that today's mission is to clear a dungeon. They will apply everything they've trained inside, and they just need to stay calm. With that, he's sure they'll complete the mission. He then begins to explain what type of dungeon they're going into while someone brings over a box filled with supplies. At this, the soldiers aren't too happy about what they see, and the commander says they're going into the rat's den, which they call the sewer. Inside, everyone is wearing masks because of the stench, and they all think it's extremely disgusting. They mention that most hunters call that dungeon the sewer. It's a rat nest dungeon. He explains that while it isn't a high-risk dungeon, around 200 monsters typically appear inside. The tunnels within the dungeon are so narrow that it's risky to use firearms, making it considered a high-difficulty dungeon. One of them notes that it seems like the only entrance there is the route they used to get in, so it might be best if they lure the monsters into that area. The commander agrees and tells them to prepare the trap. Kim adds that due to the stench filling the entire dungeon, they need to wear a special gas mask throughout the operation. So they do. Hong starts complaining about the horrible smell, and Kim says that this is exactly why hunters can't use 100% of their abilities there. Meanwhile, the commander pulls out a banana from that box. Both Kim and Han Young notice that even with the mask on, it's enough to make them want to throw up. The commander then tosses those ultra-rotten bananas everywhere. While giving orders, the commander notices something and gets scared by what he sees, realizing there are many monster skeletons scattered around. Seeing this, one of them says, "They're coming!" and tells everyone to get ready and set up a barricade at the front line. They quickly get into position, and one of them tells the others to hold the line until the rats arrive. They have to do their part. At this moment, Han Young suggests making a bet on who can kill the most to win a bonus at the shop. They make the bet, but another guy tells them not to get too nervous, and Han Young asks if he wants to join too. The guy doesn't say anything. Then, the rats start coming, and the commander tells everyone to grab their weapons and hold their positions. They have to attack without retreating. Kim is thrilled by the situation, eager to charge at the rats. Sergeant Kim Man-ke starts killing them all with his sword. Han Young decapitates all the rats in front of him, and Lee Sung-go goes at them with pure brute force. Kim watches as everyone does their part perfectly. While he's distracted, 3 rats leap toward him, and he just casually kills them without even looking, decapitating them with his spiked club. He notes that the rats are quite weak. He mentions that they have 2 big guys covering the back, and seeing them handling such a large area on their own makes him think that getting a promotion will be difficult. But then he notices that even Dong Jin is doing his part with skill, saying that the special training really paid off. But suddenly, someone starts yelling for help, and Dong Jin rushes over to assist. Meanwhile, Guangxik glances sideways in the direction where Dong Jin is running. As they finish off the rats that were attacking, they notice more rats coming from above. They shout for everyone to stay alert, and the commander orders squads 1 and 4 to head up and deal with them. They must also continue maintaining the barricade for safety. They shouldn't risk attacking those rats directly. With that, they continue the mass slaughter, wanting to push further up, as there must be more of them. Kim then asks what's going on and starts to sense demonic energy in the area, saying that he didn't notice it before because of the special gas mask, but he's now certain. He notices the ground opening up beneath them and yells to his friends that something is coming from below. But it's too late, and they almost get caught. When they look ahead, they see a massive, bodybuilder-sized rat. Kim realizes it's an irregular monster, a rat with 4 eyes. He wonders if those bones were because of it, and says that if that's the case, then it's been eating even the regular rat-type monsters, and that huge monster is a cannibal. At that moment, the monster charges at Guangxik, causing him to fall on his backside. His friend beside him thinks it's too dangerous to move forward. Besides, he can't move. They call out to Guangxik, telling him to stay calm and move away quietly. When the monster swings a paw at him, Dong Jin steps in, blocking the attack with his sword, but the sword goes flying without causing much damage to the monster. Dong Jin grabs Guangxik, telling him to get up quickly and run. While they are frozen in fear, Kim leaps over all of them, using a shield and a spiked club. He jumps directly onto the monster's head, thinking that with those beautiful eyes and its size, the monster must be full of demonic energy. He comes down like a comet, crushing the monster's head. Kim tells Dong Jin that he did a great job saving his friend. Then they warn Kim that it's too dangerous and tell him to get out of there, saying that it's too much for him. They say that all the sergeants should go with with him, and that the rest will stay in the rear. Kim starts wanting to solo the monster, charging at it with everything he has. The monster slams its paw into the ground, making the entire area shake, and rocks begin to fall from the ceiling, causing a massive collapse throughout the area. Kim thinks this is perfect. As the monster attacks again, he says he was worried that someone might see him doing this. But now, with the chaos, no one will. So, he simply delivers an electric kick to the rat's leg, and uses the spiked club in his hand to smash the rat against the wall. After being thrown, he jumps on top of it, using his demonic energy and unleashing a flurry of punches on the monster. When he lands the final blow, he notices that the rat is already dead. He takes the opportunity to absorb the demonic energy flowing from the rat. Thus, Kim reverts to being just a regular mutant, and the system informs him that he absorbed a certain amount of demonic energy and leveled up. He thinks that's great and raises his club, preparing to finish off the monster with a single blow. After all the struggle, they find themselves lying outside and start joking around, until an officer talks about the irregular monster, informing them that their squad has already dealt with it. They confirm one thing, the other squad's massacre. Meanwhile, Kim notices a horrible smell coming from his body, and the officer says that they've already called for support. Then, a friend of Kim approaches him, commenting that killing those monsters was like squashing a bug for him. He observes that Kim is pretty strange and strong, but still, he's thankful because, thanks to Kim, they're all alive. The friend admits that when that monster came at him, he couldn't even move. Kim responds that it was nothing like that, insisting that his friend should be apologizing for being so careless. But the friend says there's no need to apologize, as no one expected a bunch of those monsters. He's glad that Kim decided to step in because, otherwise, Wang Shik and Dong Jin would have been in big trouble. The friend then asks if Kim got hurt, and Kim says he didn't. The officer asks if he's really uninjured, even after facing that, and Kim reassures him that he's fine. The officer is in disbelief, saying that when they return, they're heading straight to his office. Kim doesn't quite understand what's going on but follows the order. The friend mentions that it seems the commander is really worried, and Kim doesn't fully understand what's happening. One of the officers tells the commander that the evacuation is complete, and it appears that no one got hurt. The officer mentions that Dong Jin is already leaving the medical evaluation room with just a small scratch on his head, and the soldier says he'll be able to return to duty the next morning. With this, the commander relaxes. The officer turns to the second squad, announcing that due to special circumstances, the subjugation of that dungeon ends here. As soon as they finish their medical evaluations, they should prepare to return. Sometime later, the commander tells Kim that it's nothing serious, and that he only called him because of the report. Kim needs to write down all the details of how he managed to defeat that irregular. Kim starts to ask how he should do that since he just hit the monster with a shield and then punched it. He wonders if they'll believe him. The commander sits back down, saying he couldn't see much because of all the smoke. He questions how Kim managed to punch the monster with his bare hands, looking at the boy's hands, which are covered in scars and injuries. Kim gets a bit nervous, laughing and saying that since it was a dangerous situation, he acted without thinking. The commander speaks seriously to him, asking about his physical stats. Kim responds that he has 35 in strength and 60 in dexterity. The commander thinks that even with his higher rank, he barely has 40 in strength, and someone as young as Kim already has more than 60. He wonders if that's practically the equivalent of 2 sergeants combined. He's in disbelief, saying that Kim could have gone to a military academy much earlier. The commander says it would have been worth it, but Kim thinks that when he returned, he was already marked as a school dropout. Even so, he believes that his former self wouldn't have managed. The commander asks if Kim has ever thought about leaving the military and going to college. He says that it would be possible at Kim's age, with online classes and various university programs, and asks what Kim thinks about it. But Kim says that, honestly, he hates studying and would rather continue with his military career. The commander is pleased with this, telling him that it's his choice and that he can be whatever he wants. If he ever changes his mind, he should just let him know. Then, he tells Kim to leave the report to him and to go rest. He says that if he needs anything, Kim should reach out to him. As Kim leaves the room, the commander looks at his hat and calls out to him, saying that he saved an entire squad that day and that, if he hadn't been there, things could have turned out much worse. Not even the commander could have done anything. He simply thanks the young man, and Kim says that he only did what needed to be done. As Kim leaves the room, he thinks it's time to have some fun now that he has leveled up and become stronger. But before that, he starts talking with his friends and notices that one of them wants to do special training with him, just like Dong Jin. Gwangshik says yes. Kim asks how the hell he knew they were training together, and why he suddenly decided he wanted to train with the two of them. Gwangshik recalls everything Kim did against those monsters, showing off an absurd level of skill, while he could only tremble with fear. Even Dong Jin managed to do something, and Gwangshik says it's Dong Jin's fault, wondering if he didn't become too strong. He admits that he found it incredible, and wanted to know what Kim had been up to. He realizes it's because of Kim's training and says he wants to join, but he lowers his tone, asking if he could train with them too. Kim is happy to see Gwangshik humbling himself like that, and asks why Gwangshik thought he would accept him. He also questions if there's something else he should do before all this. Gwangshik starts feeling the pressure, and quickly lowers himself, apologizing to Dong Jin and thanking him for saving him. But Dong Jin says it's okay, that he doesn't need to do that. However, Gwangshik keeps apologizing for being a bother, saying he doesn't know if Kim will accept him, but that he genuinely wants to train with them, as he wants to get stronger too so he can help the squad more. Dong Jin asks if it's okay for him to join their training, but Kim says of course, it's not okay. Gwangshik says he knew Kim would say something like that, but he thanks them both for still being alive and leaves. Dong Jin feels bad for him, but Kim says there's just one condition for him to join the training. He must pretend to be a pigeon for the next 24 hours. Gwangshik gets furious, and Kim asks if he doesn't want to do it. So, Gwangshik starts acting like a pigeon, cooing and all, while Dong Jin is surprised, and Kim laughs behind him, thinking he has another fool in his grasp. Meanwhile, in another world, a Spartan warrior helps the goddess with something heavy. She thanks him, but he remains silent, just staring at her. She asks if he has something to say, and he wonders how long they'll keep doing this. But she doesn't reply, instead going over to the cart and moving a cloth covering something underneath. Inside, there seems to be a demonic beast. Then, she uses her magic to send that beast away, saying it's just a gift for him for managing to escape on his own. Clearly not in her right mind, she asks why he cares so much about it. He knew there was something off about that woman. Back in the other world, soldiers start digging holes, and Redhead complains that they've already suffered enough in that dungeon, only to be forced to work in construction afterward. He wonders why on earth they have to do this, but his friend says he's been thinking the same thing for a while, stating that their job is supposed to be hunting and killing monsters. He questions how this fits into their duty since they're just digging holes. Just then, a military jeep arrives. They're surprised, noting that the thing has arrived. They all rush over to grab a block, and Gwangshik says it's heavier than it looks and asks what the hell it is. The officer explains that they use it for building, and that it's made from some minerals found in the dungeon. When he's about to say the real name, Kim asks if he's talking to him. Gwangshik notices that Kim is carrying two of those things on his shoulders as if it's nothing and is shocked, saying he was just talking to himself, thinking someone might be curious about what those blocks are. Then, they continue carrying them, with each one struggling, while Kim easily carries 4 on his shoulders. The officer announces that they will all take a 10-minute break, and then goes to the commander, saying he overheard something while picking up materials at the barracks, mentioning that something seems to have happened in the 104th Division's jurisdiction, and they suspect it might be a new dungeon. Everyone, including the commander, is surprised, asking if it's serious. The soldiers are terrified, worrying that if they have to enter that dungeon, they don't know what will happen to them. They wonder if it's just a joke, but the officer tells them to keep quiet as the investigation is ongoing. Kim is confused, and Gwangshik notices that he doesn't understand anything. So, Gwangshik explains that a new dungeon is a type of dungeon that tends to be much bigger inside than usual. Moreover, the number of monsters and their rank is also higher, meaning the danger level is increased. When an unidentified dungeon appears among hunters, they call it a new dungeon. Additionally, it's perfect for gaining more combat experience. When one joins the hunter's division, they can participate in high-level training in the dungeon. Gwangshik says they call it training and planning for hunters. Kim asks again whom he's talking to. Gwangshik is taken aback by the question, saying he just thought someone might be curious about Kim's thoughts on that training and planning for hunters, adding that he thinks he doesn't need any training for now. As he hears some of his friends complaining that they don't want that training because they hate it, Kim thinks he doesn't want to train either. The officer finds them all irritating, but the commander says that, even so, it's a good opportunity for them, as they will be able to accumulate many battle performance points. Kim realizes that this is true, noting that he can earn a lot of commendations, and saying that he could gain more if he heads to the front lines. He thinks this is a great opportunity. But then, his avatar appears in his shadow, and he complains about why the hell it's there. Then, he starts to leave, but Kim pushes him down again, while playing it cool in front of the officer who's busy beating everyone up. While they talk about not wanting to work in the dungeon, Kim thinks that, apparently, no one noticed he was complaining to the shadow. The shadow tells him about a woman saying she needs support, mentioning a case of an irregular monster, and that a direct request was made by the investigation team that went to the portal. The man asks if she's talking about the dungeon that appeared in their military area, and she says yes, adding that there's no danger to the civilians. However, 2 people from the investigation team ended up dying, and it hasn't been long since the report arrived. They need to do something about that dungeon urgently. So, the man says they will use their army to contain the area, as usual, and the hunters should be able to do something. His priority now is the dungeon that appeared in the residential area of Hongchan, and he tells the woman to focus on that first. Kim finds out, and is happy that the shadow brought this information. He then wonders if he should take a break to deal with this. Later at home, he packs up for his trip, wondering if he got everything. Then, he looks at a photo on the wall of the commander's family. A day earlier, the commander had asked if he already wanted to leave, mentioning that, according to the construction progress report, it seemed like they were working hard. He then asks if he wants to finish quickly and take a vacation, saying he can authorize it since Kim has been a big help to him. Kim gets all happy, and the commander tells him that the address where his house is located is now a quarantine zone. He asks Kim where he was last time he took time off, and he responds that he stayed at an internet cafe. The commander says he figured as much and tells him that, if he doesn't mind, he can stay in a place he owns. It's the apartment where he used to live with his family, and now it's empty since they had to move due to his work. But it's still clean since they go there on their vacations. Kim says he can't accept, but the commander insists that it's fine since he's the one offering it. He mentions that it's a bit far from the base, but it's in the same city and better than sleeping in an internet cafe again. Kim realizes it's Cheon, saying it won't take him too far off his route, and the commander tells him to go there, even if just to sleep, wishing him a good vacation. So, Kim accepts, and the commander starts thinking about him while he's already on vacation. Kim looks at the photo and gets ready to leave, saying it's better to go now. In the middle of the street, a shady hooded guy, nothing suspicious at all, walks by, and he remembers that woman, thinking that it seems the dungeon is near a school in Hogang neighborhood. He also remembers the woman telling her subordinate to stay away, at a distance of 1 kilometer, and to keep control over all the routes while the army monitors the entrance. Kim jumps over the buildings, landing inside. Then, he realizes he's found the portal. He wonders what kind of dungeon this will be and starts walking casually toward it. He says he wishes he knew what kind of monster is inside, but his summon couldn't get full information. Since it didn't give it to him, he'll just have to find out himself. And so, he enters the dungeon. Inside, the atmosphere is completely different, a sort of haunted forest, entirely dead. He finds this strange, looking down and finding a broken sword. He wonders if someone else was there, and when he suspects, he talks to someone, saying he knows they're there, telling them to show themselves. Then, a monster appears, a fully demonic goblin, emanating the energy he desires. But then, looking closer, he realizes it's not a goblin, but a kobold, and asks why this monster is so big. Either way, he also notices that the investigation team seems to have survived against it, and prepares to fight. When the monster charges at him, he quickly dodges, preparing a punch to counterattack. But when he punches the monster, it doesn't have much effect, and the monster stays in the same spot, letting out a scream. Kim thinks quickly and continues the attack, using his legs and hitting the monster's chin, throwing it upwards. He wonders if this monster is strong or just looks like it is, asking if it wants to attack first this time. The monster charges at him again, and Kim manages to dodge, telling it to be careful. This way, the monster's leg gets stuck in a hole that Kim opened using his corruption ability. With its leg trapped, Kim attacks it again, landing multiple punches on the monster's face, telling it to think fast, wondering if it can take it. But as he continues his barrage of punches, he notices a grin appearing on the monster's ribs, and it shields that part with its hand. Then, Kim notices another glimmer coming from there, but he gets knocked back by the monster, and realizes that the creature tore his jacket. But then, he remembers the broken sword that was there, saying that all the monsters he's seen since returning are weaker than an ant. But this monster he's facing has, at most, the strength of a beetle. The monster seems to understand what he's saying, gets pissed, and starts growling, attacking him again. Kim says that, even so, it's just another worm while he withstands the slap the monster gives to his face. Feeling really pissed, he tells the monster to see what it did, complaining that he just bought those clothes, and stabs the broken sword into the monster's belly, right where it was protecting. The monster groans in pain, and Kim continues his assault, lifting his leg and delivering a downward kick, smashing the monster's head. Then, he absorbs the demonic energy, and the system informs him that he absorbed the exact amount, leveling up 3 times. The system says that by absorbing a certain amount of energy, the skill Darkness Arrow is unlocked, and the Night Step skill levels up as well. The basic swordsman skill is created. He gets super happy, checking out his stats and noticing that they've changed quite a bit. Then, the system shows the status of the Darkness Arrow, which consumes demonic energy to imbue an arrow with its power, and the basic swordsman skill, Rank E, which increases his proficiency in using a sword in a basic manner. He notices that he finally got a long-range skill, thinking this is awesome. He also wonders why the swordsman skill was created and quickly remembers when he stabbed the monster's belly, realizing it must have been because of that finishing move, thinking that's pretty cool. And he says that, thinking about it, he wonders if they had already attacked before he arrived and questions what that shiny thing was in the monster's wound earlier. So, he cuts that part of the monster, getting startled by what it is. He looks at it, wondering if the tip of an arrow is like a knife piece, questioning if someone from the investigation team stabbed it earlier. But then he ends up remembering, realizing he has seen this somewhere before, but he doesn't have time to think because other monsters appear. Then, he says he wanted to test this new ability right now and thinks it's great that they showed up. So, the monsters get angry, and he starts to summon his magic, saying that he wants the power of the Rank E abilities, casting it toward the monsters, killing them quickly. Then, he realizes he has already tested all of them, but since he started, he might as well finish. And one monster remains alive, terrified of the kid, and he wonders where the other monsters are. Then, already at the portal, he finally exits and feels happy because he finally cleared the dungeon, and now he just needs to have some fun. Later on, back at the barracks with the soldiers, he returns to his routine and thinks that, after those amazing vacations, when he came back to the battalion, expecting them to welcome him with open arms, it was like they had just come back from a funeral. They talked to him, saying they're screwed, mentioning that they're going to have training in the new dungeon next week. He says that each squad went to a random entrance in the dungeon, aiming to reach the center, and so they start walking, with the objective being to reach the middle, and thus, the monsters also appear randomly. They get desperate upon seeing the first one. After all, no one knows what might show up. And then, the officer says that the monsters will appear in a few seconds. They begin to arm themselves, and it's said that it's like practical training for the battalion. Several balls with teeth appear. He says they're black balls, telling them to grab their weapons and get ready to shoot. And so they start firing. Kim says that, just as he expected, it was much more fun than he imagined. So, everyone starts shooting at those balls, taking them down one by one. The officer says that, due to the high elasticity of the black ball's body, it's a bit difficult to kill them with their regular weapons, so they shouldn't stop shooting for a single moment. And then, a ball gets very close, and the commander orders them to stop shooting and prepare for close combat. He says that there are only 3 of them left, and if one of those monsters bites someone, it will start sucking their blood. It will be tough to continue, so they must be careful not to get bitten. Kim thinks that if anyone there gets bitten, they'll have to stop, and because of that, they won't be able to move forward with their squad. As one of them approaches, Kim thinks that he can't let that happen, so he steps up, running forward and shouting, "If I want to!" kicking the monster upward and telling the others to get ready. The monster flies up, and Kim thinks it would be easier if he attacked with a darkness arrow. But they manage to quickly hit the monsters that Kim throws into the air, and he keeps doing that. The commander praises him, instructing them to shoot at the black balls that are up there, and so they defeat all of them. The commander says that now they'll rest for 10 minutes before continuing. They should take the opportunity to check their equipment, and if anyone is hurt, they should notify immediately so they can inform the battalion. Kim's friends go up to him, and they're all happy with his help, even Guangshik. But Lee Sung looks at him, and he just slips away quietly. Meanwhile, the red-haired guy and his friend are exhausted, wondering if this dungeon training isn't worse than the real dungeon they went to. He says he'd like to know how many minutes have passed since they entered, but his friend says he has no idea. Still, it won't be much different from the other dungeon. Then the red-haired guy asks what he's talking about, and the kid says that there's a boss in this dungeon too. The red-haired guy asks where that is. His friend immediately remembers when a group of officers entered that dungeon and killed a gigantic elephant, and that high-ranking guy did it with just his hand. So, he goes over to his friends and says that now they're going to train. And recalling this, the kid says it feels like he's trapped since they captured him alive and are going to do a mission in his place. He's already starting to get scared in advance, but the officer comes up behind him, giving both of them a hug, encouraging them and calling them girls. He says the break is over, and Kim gets excited, talking about the major, wondering what he's like. and so they keep walking. The commander notices something ahead that startles him, and everyone is surprised until Kim realizes that the one who should be injured is the Mage himself, who's waiting to beat them up. Meanwhile, an old man is smoking near an old house and notices that same barbarian from the other world, ally of the goddess, approaching. Then he says it's been a while since he came here, asking if she broke, and the barbarian gets all embarrassed. The old man says it's okay, saying it's probably because he didn't know how to use it properly. So, the barbarian just hands over his sword to the old man. He says it's pretty damaged, asking if he's been out hunting monsters, and it looks like he has. That piece of sword Kim found is a part of the barbarian's missing sword. And then, back at the central camp of the dungeon, Gojong says something, mentioning that he's never seen anything like this but thinks everything will be fine. And then, the commander of the 1st Battalion says that, hearing that, it's like he's saying that the soldiers in his division are weaklings. But Ko Jongcheol says he just doesn't want them to push themselves too hard and get hurt in the process. At that moment, Colonel Lee enters the tent, asking if he knows where the commander of his division is. Ko Jongcheol feels a bit awkward answering, and Colonel Lee is completely shocked. Sungkyun says it's just like him to pull a stunt like this, saying that no one can stop him. But then, the colonel asks why the hell he suddenly decided to participate in the training, especially since the kids don't know him yet. He questions, "And now, what's going to happen?" Then, Ko Jongcheol says that the division commander only said one thing before running off, saying there's a soldier he wants to see with his own eyes. And then, Do Sung-young is there in the middle of the battlefield, smiling and looking at Kim. All the soldiers start to get scared, saying they knew that during the dungeon training, there would be a rescue mission event, but according to the colonel, it would be a volunteer from headquarters. Imagining this, the commander is shocked because he didn't expect it to be the division commander. Then, Song goes up to him, telling him to look at his wounded tag, saying he's hurt. The commander starts trembling, introducing himself and says it will be a pleasure to be with him. Then, the other officer says that they will take him on the emergency stretcher from that moment. But then, the commander looks at him, asking if the guy is an idiot, crushing the stretcher, because this guy, with his size, definitely wouldn't fit. The officer says that their mission instructed them to bring that. But the commander doesn't care about that, saying he won't lie down there, telling him to relax a bit and keep walking. So, the officer looks directly at Kim. They exchange glances. He starts smiling, and Kim gets excited, saying that this training will be fun. And he says that he really kept having fun after that, as he carried the division commander, who watched him kill the monsters with the greatest ease. The division commander, along with this psycho, who is our protagonist, got along very well. Meanwhile, with the 2nd Squadron of the 2nd Battalion, they are struggling, facing a wet frog. He tries to hit it, but apparently, several of them appear, and he ends up fainting from exhaustion. And the frog quickly tries to lash out its tongue, but Kim quickly cuts it, and thinks that even though it's a basic skill, it has significantly increased his power. He goes up to Keelho to lift him up, and he thanks him, but Kim keeps looking at him, seeing that he is too tired. So, he goes to all the monsters, killing them one by one and freeing his friends from the battle. The division commander thinks that, even though it's just training, he could even say these were the best battle results he has ever seen. At that moment, one of the frogs tries to attack him from behind, but he throws it away with just a punch. And then, the commander orders them to check the area and rest for a while because they need to keep going. He asks Kim if everything is okay, and he says yes. The commander says that that soldier, Kim Minju, is truly amazing. Meanwhile, in the northern part of the dungeon, the girls continue struggling against the black balls, having a hard time with them, but Yunseo manages to quickly kill one of them with a single strike. So, a friend talks to Yunseo, saying she's wonderful and that she also wants to be strong like her. But the last black ball rushes toward the girl, almost hitting her, and Yunseo steps in to block it, defending with her sword but falling into a ravine while protecting her friend. Meanwhile, with Kim's platoon, everyone is chatting while he keeps daydreaming, until the general commander says that all platoon members managed to reach there without any serious injuries. He says that the platoon commander is truly competent, and the commander becomes totally startled, wondering where this is going. But when he looks to the side, he sees that he's helping his colleagues hold a sword and realizes that it's all thanks to his great platoon members. But the general commander says that this is also part of his competence, asking him to do his best until the last part of the training. So, the commander gets all happy, and then he looks at the other officer, asking what's wrong with his balance and also questioning if his left hand is just for support. He starts apologizing while all this mess is happening. Another soldier talks to Som, asking if that isn't his field hunter maneuver, and he says yes. His friend asks if he can question something, and he says no, asking him not to ask, but the guy asks anyway, questioning what that is over on the side where it says not to enter. And then, Four Eyes simply says that it's the hole and dies over there. Then, the commander says they're leaving, asking everyone to line up, and Four Eyes keeps talking about the hole. Then, his friend asks about this hole, saying that he can see it's a hole, but his friend asks if he doesn't know about the dungeon hole, saying that he thinks he slept through the dungeon info session. He says that, even though not much is known about the dungeon phenomenon, the hypothesis is that it's a space connected to another dimension through a portal. In any case, he can't think that it's a perfect connection to an infinite space. Then he says that's exactly what happens. There aren't only borders in the dungeons, but there are places where the connection is lost, and those random points are where it happens and are called dungeon holes. They start focusing on that until they notice something happening up ahead and wonder what it is, and Kim goes to take a look, getting startled along with the commander. At that moment, he notices that the person lying on the ground is Yunseo, unconscious there. So, they give her some water and wake her up, putting a splint on her leg, while the general commander just observes what's happening. The platoon commander says that he informed the battalion headquarters about the situation, so she shouldn't worry and just focus on recovering. Then, she asks if she can ask him to confirm if all the members of her battalion are safe, and he says that they are all safe and that they are very worried about her. He says they stopped the training to search for the girl, but he's sure they'll resume since he reported the situation. She thanks the commander, saying it's a relief. Then, she tries to stand up but notices that her foot is completely injured. The officer says that it would be difficult for her to continue training with that foot, and emphasizes how important it is for hunters to take care of themselves, just as much as it is to improve their combat skills. The commander says that he already contacted headquarters, and the transfer team will be arriving shortly. He says that, unfortunately, this training session will be ending, but the girl looks downcast at this information. Then, the general commander asks how the soldier is, and she is startled because it is Major General Sukyong. She wonders what the division commander is doing there, and if that platoon wasn't in the middle of their training. The commander says she's okay, mentioning that there are no severe external injuries, but she seems to have fractured her left ankle. He says he believes it will be difficult for her to continue the training. Sukyong comments that it's really unfortunate. After all, there wasn't much left to do. Then, he asks the girl what happened, and she says she's Private First Class Sukyong, and that she fell off a cliff while fighting a monster and passed out. When she opened her eyes, she was already there. He then asks if she fell beyond the edge of the dungeon or if it was a dungeon hole, adding that, in any case, she was lucky to be found so quickly. But then he notices something, asking what name she said she had. She says she is Private First Class Sukyong, and he is surprised by the name, asking if she is Sun Taeho's daughter. She becomes a bit shy, saying yes. Then, he gives her the wounded title, looking around and noticing Kim calling him. So, he goes to introduce himself while the girl blushes, wondering why it had to be that man. Then, Sukyong orders Kim to immediately lift the injured soldier, and she is shocked by this, as is Kim. Sukyong tells him to pick her up since she's hurt, and as he sees her all red, he realizes the situation is a bit serious, saying that it's okay since the assessment is complete. So, he complies with the order, approaching the girl and telling her to get on his back. She asks if he's serious, and he says she can quit the training if she wants, but in exchange, her training score will be erased. He asks what her choice is, and she finds herself with no way out, asking him to take good care of her. So, he smiles, and his friends remark that Kim is a damn monster, wondering how he still has so much strength. They say he must not even be human. He continues to carry the girl effortlessly alongside the commander, who instructs him to follow along with the deputy commander in the rear platoon and to report immediately if he gets tired. He says there's no way that will happen, thinking to himself, "Yes, sir," and the commander notices he mixed up his words and thoughts. Meanwhile, the girl remains on his back, blushing and shy about being there, while he thinks this is quite an achievement. At that moment, Sukyong sees them walking together and notes that the commander will likely speak with Sukyong, suggesting that she might be accused of receiving special treatment because she is the daughter of another division commander. But Sukyong says there's no regulation that says he shouldn't help the injured and that this is supposed to be part of the training. Then, he adds that, besides, there's something the deputy commander is forgetting, and he simply calls Sun Taeho a jerk. In that situation, being carried, everyone is watching Yunseo, and she thinks it's incredibly uncomfortable and tells tells Kim that if he gets tired, he should let her know, as she will quit. He says it's all good because she's lighter than a feather. The girl gets all flustered, and he insists that she is indeed lighter than a feather. Judging by her weight, he thinks she must weigh about 50-something kilos, but she interrupts him, telling him to shut up. He just stops talking, and she looks at him, saying she'll repay him one day for his help, to which he responds that he'll be looking forward to it. Laughing like a man, he thinks that it would be even better if her father were the one to give the reward. But then he remembers and goes back to talking about her weight, and she just asks him to shut up. So, the two keep looking at each other from behind, noticing that something is happening between them. Later that night, everyone is exhausted. They keep walking, and the red-haired guy starts hoping that no more monsters show up, saying this is hell. He wonders who changed the training difficulty from normal to hell mode but remembers Sukyang, realizing it's his fault. Then, the commander says that about 2 kilometers remain. They need to stay focused and not let their guard down until the end, sharing that message. At that point, Sergeant Al gets all excited, but they notice something, looking up at the sky and seeing monsters flying around. The commander orders all the troops to prepare for battle, as the monsters are ahead, and those demonic bats that look like piranhas are there. He says they are black hacks, wondering why they showed up now, of all times. They begin flying over their heads, and Sukyang observes from the back, thinking that they made it all this way with the troop that is, in reality, injured, but they had bad luck in the end. He says that black hacks are small monsters the size of sparrows, but their claws and teeth are sharp enough to cut through flesh. Of course, they wouldn't die from such wounds, but it would be extremely painful. At that moment, he says they are also insanely persistent, and Sukyang mentions that he can't even see them properly as his vision is worsening. Everyone tries to kill the monsters without success, and the deputy commander begins to lag behind. Sukyang notes that the situation is difficult, and from a training director's perspective, taking action with an injured person, the reaction of those guys could be grounds for point deductions. Sukyang thinks that he can't use the excuse that they're tired and have low visibility because, first of all, they are hunters. He believes that even if he leaves his post and runs to help, it won't change much. He says that, in fact, he could face a bigger point deduction if he steps out of line. He decides to trust the platoon commander for now and wait for his orders. But then, Kim gets furious seeing the situation and simply rushes into the battle, carrying the girl on his back. He goes to the platoon commander, asking for a chance. The commander then questions what the hell he's talking about, especially since he's carrying an injured person. But Kim says that everyone is at their limit, they can't keep going like this, and he's worried about the point deduction. He insists that he can do it, and with that, the commander asks what his plan is. Kim whispers in the commander's ear, and he looks shocked. Yunseo then asks what he said, and Kim looks surprised. The commander ends up agreeing, saying that if it doesn't work, they'll retreat immediately, giving Kim one last chance. Kim becomes really happy. Yunseo asks how this plan makes sense in that situation, and Kim complains that it was these people who caused the problem. At that moment, all the monsters start flying, and the commander quickly asks Kim to hand over the injured soldier to him. But Kim says there's no time for that, urging him to execute the plan right away. The commander hesitates, but instructs everyone to get behind Sergeant Kim, telling them to prepare to open fire. The Major General is completely confused about what's happening and why they opened fire, wondering if Kim plans to take down those bastards with rifles. Kim tells the girl to hold on tight. After all, he doesn't want to lose the injured person. She says he's crazy, clinging to him tightly. The protagonist activates his demonic energy, saying that as a dark mage, killing those monsters is going to be like playing in a park since he's familiar with this type of monster from the beginner training grounds. He thinks that, besides that, he has the dark arrow ability. He activates it, shooting at the monster, which can be hidden within a long-range weapon. The arrow flies toward the monster, killing it quickly. Yunseo notices that he hit and killed it but wonders how. He thinks that it's hard to dodge a bullet that grows to the size of a cannonball, thanks to the demonic energy enveloping it. He also thinks that he can't be detected since it's nighttime and is thrilled by the dark arrows. He then starts to quickly kill all the monsters, which vanish one by one. Everyone thinks he's amazing, but while he turns around, striking a pose, Yunseo remains clinging to his back, and everyone is envious, saying that lucky bastard is too much. Some time later, they finally return to the base. And after everyone is inside, one of the officers there says that all members of the 2nd platoon of the 2nd company of the 2nd battalion passed. Everyone is happy, while Kim still holds her in his arms. He thinks that everyone passed, and then the medical team asks to please inspect the injured first. The commander says that everyone did a great job, thanking them for not giving up on themselves and enduring to the end. Everyone feels happy, and the commander tells them not to lose focus as they will be relocated to tents to rest, instructing everyone to move. Meanwhile, Kim continues carrying the girl and asks where he should go to be rewarded for his achievements. The commander then calls Kim, saying he did a great job. He was the first to act and didn't shy away from danger. Kim simply thanks his superior, thinking it's a given, but he still feels a bit shy about it. Yunseo then asks if she can be put down now, and after being placed on the stretcher, she apologizes for any trouble she may have caused to their platoon and also thanks them. The commander says he's glad they were able to finish the training together and asks her not to think of herself as a burden. At that moment, Sukyang arrives, laughing and saying that's great. He adds that in the end, the entire platoon managed to finish the training and goes to hug Kim, but Kim slips away. Then, he tries again, chasing after Kim for a hug. The commander remarks that, honestly, it's all thanks to that damn guy. While Sukyang is messing around with Kim, he hears a familiar voice. It's Colonel Yu Jaihai, bringing some of the commanders with her. As she passes by, she doesn't look at Sukyang, and Kim is surprised by that. She goes straight to Yunseo, asking how her injury is. Yunseo says that besides the injury to her left ankle, there's nothing serious. The colonel then says she was lucky, considering she fell into a dungeon hole, and orders that they transport her carefully. Then, she looks to the side, asking Sukyang how the training observation went, and if she can request a private conversation about all of it. He asks if it has to be now, and she says yes. He asks again if it really has to be now, and she, looking a bit stern, says it absolutely has to be right now. A while later, Kim is devouring food, and the cook keeps bringing him more, asking if he wants some more chicken. Kim questions if it's really okay for him to eat all that, and the cook says yes since everyone else is asleep. Kim doubts anyone else will show up for a meal, so he says he can't let the effort go to waste and asks him to pass the chicken. The cook then asks if Kim is from the 2nd platoon of the 2nd company, saying he heard they were the best in the division during that training. Kim asks if that's true, and the cook says it is, mentioning he heard the higher-ups earlier, saying that the battalion commander praised Kim's achievements, and that he even took care of the black hacks in the middle of the night, asking if that's true. Kim says that something like that did happen, and the cook asks if it's really possible to defeat them at night, saying that, either way, Kim is incredible. The cook says that, from what he heard, that field maneuver round was the worst so far. He heard that, throughout the division, about 70% of the first-class corporals had given up. He keeps talking too much, and Kim couldn't care less about what he's saying. After all, that meat is just too good. Later, a few officers are gathered when that important guy, whose rank I forgot, looks out the window and says the camp seems very quiet. One of them agrees, saying that since they gave them the morning off as he suggested, most of the soldiers are sleeping in. Then, he says those bastards should get up and eat, acknowledging that everyone did well in the training, and even the division commander was impressed. One of them mentions that he personally observed the 2nd platoon of the 2nd company, and Captain Kim says he's looking forward to meeting the division commander because he's very nice and not arrogant at all. But when he looks to the side, the superior next to him doesn't seem to agree. Captain Kim asks if he said something wrong, and the superior says no, that it's not his fault. It's just that the commander of the 4th battalion was pretty stressed because of that incident. He asks what she's like, wondering how she could say something like that to the division commander. The superior says it's not like she was wrong. They couldn't defend against the fact that he abandoned his position without notice. Plus, even he finds the 4th battalion commander a bit intimidating. But he adds that, anyway, everything went well, thanks to Kim again. Everyone agrees that he's truly amazing, and the superior says that Kim proved his worth right in front of the division commander, and starts laughing, saying he's looking forward to the next monthly meeting. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the 104th Division, Sukyang is looking at the report while the commander is calmly drinking her tea. He then speaks to her, saying that it should serve for the dungeon elimination schedule, also asking how Yunseo, the first-class private, is doing. She says that they mentioned it's not a fracture, and since her recovery is going well, she should finish the treatments tomorrow and continue with her duties. Sukyang notes that she must have taken after her father. Then, he answers the phone, introducing himself as Sukyang. The person on the other end, likely the girl's father, calls him a damn bearded man. He asks who it is, questioning if he forgot his voice. Then, he realizes it's Major General Sun Taeho and asks why they don't have a duel. He says this very angrily, by the way. At this point, Sukyang starts cursing as well, asking why the hell he's calling out of nowhere. He also asks why he called him a damn bearded man. Taeho says that he's the damn bearded one. Anyway, they're going to have a duel, asking where would be best for it. Sukyang, furious, asking if he's like this because his daughter got hurt and questioning how he dares call himself a general. Taeho says that he is a soldier and a general. He just wanted to get some exercise with Sukyang's punching bag, which lasts much longer than a regular one. Sukyang retorts, saying that Taeho is very immature, apologizing for his daughter getting hurt, but that it happened during training. But Taeho hits him where it hurts, asking what Sukyang knows when he couldn't even get married. He then says it's fine and asks where he is. Sukyang asks why he's not answering, wondering if he's in Daeho now, because he shouldn't leave from there. He also says it's not that he couldn't get married, it's just that he didn't want to. Sukyang then asks what the hell is going on with that bastard, questioning if he's not going to answer him. At that moment, the commander says the call ended. Now, utterly frustrated, he finally realizes and asks if she has Taeho's number, telling her to call him back immediately. But then, she asks him to calm down, saying she believes Taeho has every right to be upset at the moment. He gets furious at what she says, asking if she's taking that nerd's side and if she was the one who told him about his daughter's injury. She says that since she was transferred, she's sure the hospital called her guardian. And besides, her guardian has every right to know that his daughter is injured. She received special permission to finish the training before being transferred to the hospital. Sukyang calms down a bit. In fact, he's going to explain himself, as there seems to have been a misunderstanding. And with that, he shows her that he broke his phone, asking for hers and saying he'll call Taeho on speakerphone, not wanting to hand his phone to that brute. Then, he's all jittery near the phone, waiting for Taeho to answer. Taeho asks why she's calling Colonel Sun Taeho, wondering if she's with that damn bearded man at the moment. She replies that yes, she is, and apologizes for not contacting him sooner. She explains that the division commander's phone is broken, so she called him instead, and he says that he couldn't speak earlier because he was too stressed, but that there was an emergency while he was observing that particular platoon. However, he swallows his pride and says he was careless. And even though it wasn't his own daughter, if someone were to give her such special permission, he wouldn't have been able to remain quiet, and he formally apologizes since, after all, he got in the way of her growth. Colonel Taeho is very proud of him. Taeho, who is on the call, asks what the hell Sukyang is talking about, and neither of them understands. Sun Taeho says that Sukyang must be very scared and therefore should forget about their duel and just give him the name of the bastard who carried his daughter on his back. Sukyang asks what he's talking about, and Taeho questions how he dares let his daughter be carried by someone who isn't even a doctor. He says he can't even remember the last time he carried the girl. Taeho adds that, anyway, it's better to prepare for next time and asks again for the name of the bastard who carried her. Meanwhile, Kim has no idea of the mess he's getting into, thinking about the taste of the chicken as he keeps walking. He passes by his shadow, which starts calling for his attention. He looks at it, telling it to hide, then takes it away and throws it outside. Kim asks what it's doing, questioning if he didn't tell it to stay hidden. It seems uncertain but remembers it has something to tell him. He says he was aware that there was no one around, but asks if it didn't think for a second that he would get angry if it kept appearing like that. Feeling a bit down, the shadow ends up receiving food from him. He asks what it is this time, and it shows him the memory. Seeing that, he wonders if there was an ambush or something and also notices a suspicion of demonic energy around. He ends up discovering that it's in Watchan again, so he says that it made the whole trip there, which he finds impressive for his shadow. Then, he gives it a bit more demonic energy, saying that now he might need to think of an excuse to leave again. He starts thinking that it would look suspicious if he left suddenly, but it would be a waste of his vacation days if it was just a mere suspicion. He says it was lucky that he was granted a day off as a reward when he went to Yeongu last time. When he enters the room, everyone is celebrating something. They congratulate Kim because he was selected as the best soldier in the Hunter's Field Maneuvers division. He thanks the commander. Then, the commander says that they mentioned there would be a prize this time too, and asserts that, in any case, thanks to him, the entire platoon received a day off as a reward. His eyes light up. He asks if he can use his day off the next day, and the commander notices he seems a bit rushed, asking if something's wrong. Kim says no, that he just wants a day off tomorrow and that's it. Everyone notices that the guy is quite stubborn. The commander says it's fine and that he'll take care of it. He thanks the platoon commander. The next day, he's already in Watchin, and everyone there is working, but he wonders what's going on, how things turned out like this, and why there are so many hunters present. He stands among all of them, thinking that his shadow should return the demonic energy to him soon, as it tricked him. Moments earlier, on the outskirts of Watchin, the female soldiers are doing cleanup. One of them asks when it's going to end, and another says their performance in the hunters' maneuvers was terrible. That's why, as the battalion is irritated, she should stop complaining and get back to work. But then, she says she's dead tired, asking why the monsters had to come out of that portal just as they finished training. The other tells her to be thankful she's not part of the attack team because, besides that, some people lost their homes there, so she should watch her mouth. And then, the girl with black hair starts looking back and notices Yunseo working too, so she asks how she's doing, questioning if she isn't overexerting herself. The girl simply says she's fine and mentions that her recovery ability is incredible, but just as a precaution, she should take it easy. Yunseo thanks her for being concerned. At that moment, they hear some girls talking, wondering who a hunter is and noticing it's a guy. Then, Yunseo asks what's going on and realizes who it is. The other girls also notice he's from their division and ask which battalion he's from. She recognizes Kim, the hunter, but he's not too happy to recognize her, wondering why she's there. Then, she goes up to him and asks what brings him there, stating that, as far as she knows, only her battalion was assigned to the area. He simply responds that he's on vacation. She gets annoyed by the way he answers and says he's lying because who would come to that place wearing a military uniform while on vacation? She asks if he's deserted or is on the run, but he hands her a paper, and she notices that he really is on vacation. He immediately thinks that the girl has a trust issue or something like that. Then, she asks why, of all places, he came there, questioning if he doesn't know that area is restricted. He's at a loss for words, wondering why she's like this, since he can't tell her he came there to gather demonic energy. He just says that he had some business in Watchin and heard there was an emergency there, so he came to see if there was anything he could help with. At that moment, a portal break happens right in front of him, and he's thrilled, realizing that it's a portal. Everyone starts screaming, and that annoying girl with pink hair asks why it showed up again after being cleared, saying they'll need to do another cleanup later. The black-haired girl says they need to evacuate and report to the platoon commander, telling them to run to where the platoon commander is. While everyone is running, the girl speaks to Kim, saying they need to evacuate, but he's very interested in that portal and says that monsters might come out soon, so he's going to stay and buy them some time. The girl questions what nonsense he's talking about since no one knows what might come out of there, telling him to evacuate the area quickly. But he says it looks like the attack team has already left the area, and if monsters come out of the portal, everyone will be in danger, so he's staying. However, if things get too complicated, he'll run away, asking her not to worry. If she has any equipment, she should lend it to him and run. She tries to argue, but he tells her that her foot is still not 100%, so he tells her to get out of there quickly, as she's in the way. She feels hesitant but hands him a knife, saying that if things get dangerous, he should run. And so, she says she'll return with the platoon members as soon as possible. Then, he stays behind alone and says that among all the monsters, there are those that don't like to leave their habitats. If it's a portal leading to a dungeon with that type of monster, they usually stay inside. However, monsters that don't do that usually move in packs. Then, everyone quickly leaves the area. He says he understands now, seeing those demonic boars charging at him. He notices they are red boars and comments that they are excited after consuming demonic energy, charging straight at them. Kim activates his black arrow ability, hitting several of them at once. The protagonist notes that the black arrows are still not strong enough to pierce their hide, so he jumps high and asks what else they have besides high defense. He lands slashing at the boars, but can't kill them with just that. Kim acknowledges that their hide is tough but wonders if the same applies to their insides. Activating his demonic energy again with the rank decorruption ability, he starts killing them from within. He then asks what's wrong, wondering if the demonic energy he gave them doesn't suit their taste. One of the boars starts to die but still charges at him, only to end up killing its own friend in a frenzy. Kim is pleased with this outcome, absorbing the demonic energy from their bodies and noticing it leaving them. He wonders if the knife will work better now and easily manages to kill them. The The system informs him that he has absorbed a certain amount of demonic energy, increasing his demonic energy stat by 1. This happens 3 more times, and he ends up improving his Nightwalker ability, as well as the basic Grim skill. He says everything's fine and heads back into the portal. He notices everyone is still there, but before he can enter the portal, he sees the female soldiers have returned much quicker than expected. One of them approaches him, asking if he is Kim, the corporal, and if he's hurt anywhere. Even after saying he's fine, she questions if that's true, insisting that he should have reported as soon as the portal opened, asking why he stayed there. He explains that he didn't know what kind of monsters might come out and was trying to buy time for his companions to evacuate. The women blush at his masculinity, but inwardly, he's annoyed, thinking they ruined everything. At this moment, the lieutenant asks what he's doing there and which unit he's with. He replies that he's Corporal Kim from the 2nd Company of the 2nd Battalion. The lieutenant notes that he's on leave and asks why he would come there while on vacation, questioning if his home is nearby. He says he's there because he had some business in Watchin, but he heard about a portal opening and came to see if he could be of any help. She accepts the explanation, saying that since there were no casualties and all the monsters that appeared were defeated, they'll leave the area. She informs him that the investigation team will arrive soon and will handle the situation with the attack team. At that, they all realize that Kim defeated 5 red boars by himself and become quite smitten with him, asking if he did it using just a combat knife. They talk about how incredible his strength is, while 2 others watch the fanfare he's attracted. He doesn't seem happy at all with the attention, simply asking to be left alone. Later that night, the commander learns that Kim has gotten himself into trouble and, speaking to someone on the phone, says that one of his men is currently on vacation. But he finds out that the kid went to the outskirts of Watchin, in Gwangju province, the place where the incident broke out. He learns that Kim killed red boars and volunteered for public welfare work. The lieutenant confirms, saying that the portal is temporarily sealed, and they are currently disinfecting the affected residences. But Corporal Kim volunteered and is helping out. It's her first time seeing this, and one of the girls says she heard that the hunter is on vacation, yet he's helping during his time off. The girl with pink hair is quite charmed by him, and then asks how he managed to fight those boars using just a knife. She mentions that being hit by their charge is nearly the same as being run over by a truck. Kim continues working, thinking about those boars. He says that activities like this are annoying, but it will improve his image before he leaves. At that moment, Yunseo comes to talk to him, startling him as he nearly sprays her with disinfectant. She gets furious, but he asks her to move aside. She's taken aback, asking if they can talk for a minute. They step aside for a conversation, and he asks what she wants to discuss. She asks if, that day when he was leaving, he cursed her from the window of his bus. He asks what she's talking about, saying he doesn't even remember. But he does recall looking at her from the bus window and says he didn't curse her. He just told her that if she messed with him again, she'd be dead. She asks if that's not basically a curse or a threat. He admits that she provoked him first that day and maybe it's late, but he apologizes for it. He thinks to himself that she lives a rather annoying life. She then asks if he accepts her apology, and he says there's nothing to apologize for in the first place. He suggests letting it go and says that if they're done, he'll leave first. At that, she brings up another topic, asking if he knew there was only one case of a first-class soldier achieving a perfect score on the promotion test. He asks if she's talking about him, but she says no, mentioning that there was someone else in the past who achieved it. He then asks who it was, and she says it was her old man but corrects herself, saying it was her father. He realizes she's talking about the division commander, and she confirms, saying he's the only person who managed to earn a general's insignia after starting as a soldier. She joined the military herself, wanting to become someone like him. He notes that her father reached his goal first and finds it intriguing, but he's also a bit curious. He mentions that the Hunter Army was formed when portals began appearing, and he was only 5 years old at the time. He wonders if the realistic division commander took him in as a recruit after he became awakened, but she says no. To be honest, she says her father used to have a frail body when he was younger, and due to vision problems and other issues, he was exempted from military service. Then, Kim realizes that after awakening, and with his improved physique, he enlisted of his own will. She says yes, mentioning that he always told her it was a relief for him to have awakened because now he can protect both her and her mother. Kim responds that seeing her expression makes him want to get to know him better. She says that if they meet, she's sure her father will be very happy to see him. She adds that he would be happy because he has an extraordinary fondness for strong soldiers. Tell me if you like this story in the comments. Be careful not to be taken to Isekai.